Chapter 1. Crossing. Can a woman who throws herself at a man be any good? You're a college student and her family's situation didn't allow her to get into college. How could she possibly be worthy of you? If you dare choose her today, I'll die in front of you. Qiao, if you love me, you should understand me, don't keep pushing me. Two voices echoed back and forth in Qiao's head, causing her a headache. Her eyes barely opened to a sliver, revealing a dark ceiling where reeds were neatly arranged. She suddenly woke up. Earthen walls, a hard-board bed, two large boxes placed in the corner and a long table by the window. She was stunned. Where was this? Shouldn't she be at Gorge Mountain Temple in Yanjing with her cousin, burning incense for a marriage? Fragments of memory slowly seeped into her mind, and it took her a long time to piece together her current situation. She had traveled through time. It was now the winter of 1977. The original owner had the same name, age, and was 18. Not long ago, her childhood sweetheart's mother forced them to break up, claiming that the original owner wasn't worthy of him after failing the college entrance exam. Desperate, she jumped into the river, but thankfully Qin from the neighboring Feng family village saved her. The two emerged from the river soaked and many people witnessed it. Gossip spread throughout the village, and the original owner's parents demanded that Qin take responsibility. Qin, a notorious troublemaker, had a fierce reputation. On the day of the wedding, he was reported and arrested for causing a disturbance while drunk the night before. The original owner, hopeless about living with such a person, ended her own life with a rope while unattended. Just then there was a creaking sound. The door opened from the outside and an 18 or 19-year-old walked in, wearing a dark blue cotton coat, tall and lean, around 1.88 meters. His hair was thick and his facial features were sharply defined. With a piece of dry grass between his lips, he had an unruly air and didn't even look her in the eye. I heard from the neighbors that you tried to kill yourself when I wasn't around. If you want to die, do it far away, you unlucky thing. Qiao was surprised. Her original husband? He was quite handsome, but unfortunately he opened his mouth. At this moment, an elderly woman in her 60s burst in from outside. Of average height and full of energy, she jumped up and pulled on his ear. You little rascal, what nonsense are you spouting? Hiss, ouch. Get lost. Old Mrs. Qin added a kick, then turned with a smile to Qiao and said, Qiao, he doesn't know how to talk, don't take it to heart. Grandma, is she going to visit her family or not? I'm going out. Old Mrs. Qin took a deep breath and shouted from her belly, you stay put at home. Then she turned back to Qiao with affection and said, if he dares bully you on your return today, don't hesitate to tell me and I'll take care of him. Qiao replied with a complex feeling, After the old lady left, she got up and tidied her clothes, then sat in front of the mirror to comb her hair. The reflection frightened her into retreating. Heavens! Apart from the hairstyle and clothing, it really was her appearance. Unable to understand it, she adjusted her mindset, sat back in front of the mirror, braided her thick bangs into her hair, revealing her full forehead, tied two short braids with hairbands, and wore a scarf to cover the marks on her neck. Then she stepped outside and looked around. Two earthen houses with walls extending on both sides formed a small courtyard. There was a shed on the left neatly arranged with kitchenware and farm tools. The ground was clean. But where was everyone? After a moment's hesitation, she called out for Grandma. The girl's voice was soft and tender. Qin peeked out from the next room, a glimmer of amazement in his eyes. A small, palm-sized oval face, almond-shaped eyes, peach blossom cheeks and naturally rosy lips slightly pursed. Her skin was so fair and delicate-looking. Why hadn't he noticed how vibrant and beautiful she was before? He watched her give him a sweet smile and say, I'm all ready. The young woman's radiant smile dazzled the young man's eyes. Did she think a brush with death taught her to be agreeable? Too late. He still remembered the harsh, insulting words she had thrown at him. He squinted his cold, piercing eyes, suddenly looked away, strode over to his bike and impatiently said, If you're ready, get on the bike already, quit dawdling. Qiao. Didn't people say you shouldn't hit someone who's smiling? Why was he acting like this? She took a deep breath and silently chanted, I'm magnanimous, I won't lower myself to your outdated ways. She stepped forward and sat sideways, but as soon as she settled down, the bike took off and she instinctively grabbed onto him in fear. Why are you making a fuss in broad daylight? The young man forcefully slapped her hand. On the wedding day, the bride's feet shouldn't touch the ground, and when he carried her inside, she cursed him for not knowing where his hands had wandered. Li Qiao cried out in pain, her hand tingling, her exquisite facial features twisted with grievance. Every house in the village had its doors wide open, yet no one was in the yards or on the roads. As they neared the village entrance, they saw groups of children sliding on the ice. Weren't the village adults afraid the children might slip into the river while skating? Li Qiao wanted to warn the children to stay away from the ice, but the young man's bike was too fast for that. About 20 minutes later, the bicycle halted at the entrance of a farmhouse. 3 large earthen rooms came into view with farming tools scattered messily around the yard, and rotten vegetable leaves and firecracker scraps tossed carelessly on the ground. 4 women of varying ages and a boy around 10 came out to greet them. Li Qiao's mind went blank as she heard Qin Jin call the middle-aged woman mom, then address the sisters big sister and second sister, and the boy Jinyo. She followed his lead and also sized them up discreetly. The big sister looked around 25 or 6, and the second sister was in her 20s as well. Both were very pretty with fair skin. Jinhua seemed about her age, and since Qin Jin referred to both Jinhua and Jinyo by their names, were they his younger siblings? As her gaze shifted, she saw Jinhua staring wide-eyed at Qin Jin, mesmerized by his looks. When she looked at him, all she got was a dagger-like glare. Li Qiao. After a few polite exchanges, Li Xingkai, Li Qiao's father, and the other 2 brothers-in-law emerged from the main room, casting a glance over the cigarettes and liquors Qin Jin had brought, smiling broadly. Good to have you back, really good. I heard you can drink a lot, so today let's have a proper toast. Qin Jin busied himself handing out cigarettes and making small talk. The room was filled with smoke, making Li Qiao cough constantly. A sharp pain throbbed in her head. She excused herself for the bathroom to go outside for some fresh air. Li's mother, Dong Lemay, caught up with her. Third one, later go to the village store to get 2 bags of peanuts as snacks for the drinks. Then she walked away. Li Qiao was incredulous, hearing for the first time that she'd have to buy snacks herself when visiting relatives. Why should she buy them? And it's not like she had any money. She wouldn't buy them. She went to a dirt pile not far from home and looked around. She saw endless wildlands and low hills with villages hidden among them. If it weren't for the foreign memories in her head, she'd really think she was abducted to some godforsaken place. Third sister. Li Qiao turned to see it was Jinhua. What's up? Li Jinhua's eyes twinkled. Third sister, a couple of days ago, Kai Hechuan came to discuss taking you out to avoid some heat during your visit today. I can help you meet him. Li Qiao questioned. Didn't this older girl know that running away with a man might affect her reputation too? Maybe she only thought of Li Qiao, but as an elder sister she couldn't be so careless. If I run with him, it'll ruin your chances at a good marriage. Don't set up a meeting with that guy, pretend I don't know him. Don't say emotional things, see you at the threshing field. Li Jinhua ran off. Hey! Li Qiao wanted to stop her, but a sudden cramp in her lower abdomen hit her. Was her period coming? She had no money, what could she do? Holding her aching stomach, Li Qiao went to the village store where the shopkeeper told her they didn't sell sanitary pads, instead handing her some yellow paper. Li Qiao was stunned. Isn't this money for burning to the dead? But there was no other way. She caught sight of some paper clips, which were fixed with 2 and priced at a dime. She said, "Put it on my father's account." You're even running a tab for a piece of paper. On her anxious way back, Li Jinhua called out to her from behind, scolding, "Third sister. I've been looking for you, didn't I ask you to go to the threshing field?" Li Qiao looked over the young man beside Li Jinhua in his early 20s, with a handsome face and about 175 centimeters in height, clad in a Zhongshan suit with leather shoes. Everyone else was poor and disheveled, so this person's bright and shiny appearance indicated his family must be well off. He hurried over to Li Qiao in big strides. Qiao, I've already made up my mind, let's run away first. Once the rice is cooked, my mother won't be able to disagree. After all the blind loyalty my third sister has shown to you, she even attempted suicide at the Qin family. How can you think of hopping on the train before buying a ticket? If word gets out, how can she face anyone? Li Jinhua cursed. Kai Hechuan's face looked ugly. Then what do you suggest we do? Li Jinhua promptly handed the decision over to Li Qiao. Third sister, what do you think? Li Qiao considered carefully, had the serious matter of the suicide spread to her parental village already? And yet her parents and sisters didn't ask a single question? Li Jinhua was similarly mindful of Li Qiao's interests, yet as a sister knowing about the suicide attempt, she didn't show any concern but was single-mindedly helping her and Kai Hechuan elope. She originally planned to return home to discuss divorce with her parents, but now she changed her mind. "You little vixen." A thunderous voice scared Li Qiao into a shiver. "Seducing our Hechuan behind my back again, I'll beat you, a wretch born without a mother's care." Mrs. Kai He Chirong threw her shoe at Li Qiao. Li Qiao dodged swiftly and seeing the shrew's aggressive stance turned and ran. It was not that she couldn't fight back, but she needed to maintain her dignified ladylike image. He Chirong, frustrated at hitting air, chased and cursed, "You little vixen. Today I must teach you on behalf of your dead mother how to behave." Li Qiao was astonished. A dead mother? So the well-dressed Jinhua and Jinyo were born from a stepmother? She finally understood Jinhua's actions. Supporting her love was false. Making her the target of all was the real purpose. How wicked. She was almost home when Qin Jin's figure burst into view. She hid behind him. Qin Jin, just coming out from the outhouse, was a bit stunned. "What's going on?" Upon seeing the furious Mrs. Kai, he immediately understood. Like a dog returning to its vomit, she had hooked up with Kai Hechuan once back in the village and was now being chased around by the family head for everyone to see. Such an embarrassment. Li Jinhua and Kai Hechuan almost simultaneously caught up with He Chirong. Seeing one's rival only intensified the animosity. Qin Jin swung his arm and landed a punch right on Kai Hechuan's face. Deal with the adulterer first, then the adulteress. Kai Hechuan, a frail scholar, was no match for Qin Jin, who often fought. He was soon pinned to the ground and rubbed raw. He Chirong shouted hysterically, "Help! Someone! He's killing someone!" The scene was a complete mess. Li Qiao, worried about the consequences, plucked up the courage to step forward and grab Qin Jin's punching arm tightly. With one less hold on him, Kai Hechuan took the chance to fight back. Li Qiao noticed sharply and turned to block, taking a solid punch to the waist, which left her seeing stars from the pain. Kai Hechuan was stunned. He had used all his strength with that blow, and even though he was still lying down, he still reached out to help her up. Before anyone else, Qin Jin pushed her aside and cursed, "What the hell are you doing here, woman, when men are fighting?" He thought she was going to take sides, but instead she took a punch for him. What on earth was she up to? He Chirong pulled the disheveled Kai Hechuan up, brushed the dirt off him, and lamented that his good clothes had gotten dirty and that his handsome face was swollen. She then unleashed a torrent of curses on Qin Jin. "You little bastard without a father's discipline or a mother's teaching, what's so great about you picking up my son's cast-off fling?" Qin Jin refused to back down. "I'll screw your entire household registry. You're the worn-out shoe." This was quickly followed by a litany of vulgar epithets concerning human anatomy. Li Qiao thought, doesn't it burn his mouth for a man to say such things? The neighboring families, hearing the commotion, all came out to watch. He Chirong took the opportunity to proclaim that Li Qiao was shameless for seducing her son and that loser Qin also hit people. Qin Jin was about to fight again, but Li Qiao forcibly dragged him away from the place of conflict. Li Jinhua said, "Calm down, brother-in-law, this really isn't my sister's fault. It's all because of Kai Hechuan and his mother causing trouble. Both of them are no good. Damn it all." Qin Jin said darkly and walked away, kicking even a passing dog on the way out. Li Jinhua muttered to his retreating figure, "Brother-in-law, how can you not believe her?" Li Qiao quietly watched Li Jinhua's performance. First she instigated a meeting between her and Kai Hechuan, then she intentionally clarified things in front of Qin Jin. Wasn't she just making things worse? Her skills at sowing discord were quite polished. It seemed this wasn't her first time using them. Li Jinhua continued, "Sis, you shouldn't blame brother-in-law either. Just take the chance to explain things clearly and it'll be fine." Feigning sadness, Li Qiao responded softly, Li Jinhua thought what a pity it was. If He Chirong hadn't come out to make trouble, Kai Hechuan and Li Qiao would have already left. After returning home, several women had gathered in the courtyard. Dong Lame raised her voice at Li Qiao. "Li Qiao, your aunties told me you met with Kai Hechuan and his mother caught you. You're married to Jin now. How could you behave so inappropriately? Aren't you ashamed? Where are the peanuts I asked you to buy?" You're always lost in your thoughts and good for nothing. The older sisters wanted to speak up but were quietly stopped by their husbands. Qiao calmly said, I just ran into him on the road. The aunties are misinformed. You're my mother and you should trust in my character. You know I'm good for nothing and you still asked me to buy peanuts. Look, I forgot, didn't I? Jinhua should go buy them as you're the smartest and most diligent one in the house. In a few words, not only did she clear her name concerning her meeting with Kai Hechuan, but she also subtly pointed out to outsiders how her stepmother knew only how to reprimand and take advantage of others while she herself avoided being taken advantage of. Li Jinhua was so angry she was panting, but as the task wasn't really meant for her, why should she be the one to buy them? Yet it wasn't appropriate for her to lose her temper in front of everyone, so grudgingly she agreed. Dong Lemay was surprised as the girl usually wasn't too bright or sophisticated, but today she had somehow smartened up. Li Qiao finished speaking and went straight back to the original master bedroom, found a piece of clean cloth, wrapped it around some yellow paper and made a simple sanitary pad to use. Then she began to look for the original occupants' books and study materials. Of all the pursuits, learning is the most noble. She still had to study. The previous contest she won had secured her admission to a university, but she also had good grades, so the standard exams should not be a problem for her. Her two older sisters came into the room, their words full of concern for her. They took turns counseling her about her interaction with Kai Hechuan, stressing that he was unreliable and not worth remembering. After the farce, Li Qiao was able to discern who was good and who was bad. She promised them she would live a good life with Qin Jin and never see Kai Hechuan again. Feeling reassured, the older sisters left the room. Li Qiao carefully organized her books and fastened them with a net to the side of her bike seat. When Li Jinhua returned with the peanuts, she noticed the books behind Li Qiao's bike seat and her brows furrowed. Why was Li Qiao taking books? She couldn't be planning to retake the exams, could she? Could it be that Li Qiao had also been reborn the day before? In this life, did she aspire to strive hard and go to college? No, that's not right. If Li Qiao had been reborn, she would undoubtedly be ingratiating herself with Qin Jin straight away, rather than meeting Kai Hechuan so calmly. She needed to coax some information to understand what was going on. She found Li Qiao in private. Third sister, why did you buy yellow paper on credit? Because of that, I was publicly asked for money. Sorry about that, I didn't bring money with me when I went out. You can ask loser Qin for it, just say I owe you. Li Jinhua certainly wouldn't trouble Qin Jin over a mere dime. She changed the subject. Mom said you are repeating a year, is that true? Li Qiao wasn't prepared to tell Li Jinhua the truth. When did she say that? Oh. Loser Qin, the educated youth from the village, needed the books. I just picked them up on my way home. Li Jinhua secretly breathed a sigh of relief, so that was it. Right, third sister, I just heard on the street that Kai Hechuan's mom is clamoring to arrange his engagement. Do you have any plans for that? Li Qiao's eyes slightly narrowed. Li Jinhua was saying these things in front of her just to see her pained expression of unrequited love. She had to put on a show, she couldn't let Li Jinhua be disappointed. She pretended to be in agony and said, what plans can I have? But even if Kai Hechuan gets married, I won't live peacefully with loser Qin. You'll see, we'll divorce sooner or later. Upon hearing this, Li Jinhua let go of the doubts in her mind. She smirked secretly. Li Qiao was still the same foolish love-struck girl. She really was blind. Kai Hechuan was selfish, spoiled by his mother, and didn't do anything when his mom berated her harshly. He just stood by without uttering a word. Qin Jin, the one who was not favored, would help her talk back. Just for this alone, he was streets ahead of Kai Hechuan, okay? In her past life, Li Qiao didn't appreciate such a good man. She even reported him for speculation to get a divorce, which resulted in him being sentenced to 3 years of reform through labor and indirectly caused the death of old Mrs. Qin. Qin Jin, disheartened, agreed to the divorce, and whether it was karma or not, Kai Hechuan's wedding news broke just 2 days later. Her parents wanted to find her another man, but she flat out refused. Perhaps her sincerity had moved the heavens because, 3 years later, Kai Hechuan's wife was washed away in a flood. The two lovers eventually got married. But when she aged and faded, Kai Hechuan actually took a mistress and she, foolish enough, was manipulated into leaving the house without a penny to her name. To support the child left by her ex-husband's deadbeat ex-wife, she didn't have her own children and ended up having no one to rely on in old age. Meanwhile, Qin Jin, after being released from prison, made a fortune dealing in antiques, expanding to real estate, building materials, hotels, entertainment, and so on, becoming incredibly wealthy. Even past the age of 60, he still looked spirited and formidable. Every time the news featured a report about him, she couldn't help but think to herself that if the person who had married him back then wasn't Li Qiao but her, she definitely would have supported him from nothing to everything. Though she was reborn 2 days late, it was okay since she had the upper hand. In this life, she was determined to marry him and bear a whole brood of children to inherit his empire. After the wedding reception, Qin Jin drank quite a lot. Li Qiao wanted to stay overnight, but their stepmother urged them to leave, saying that returning late from the reception was a taboo against their natal family. Qin Jin, completely drunk, couldn't control the vehicle, swerving left and right, causing Li Qiao to jump out of the car for fear of crashing. Qin Jin stopped the car immediately, hiccuping while drunk and slurring his words. "Wanna go find that Kai guy? Dare to cuckold me? I'll beat you till you're rolling in piss." Li Qiao. Domestic violence? Scared of being beaten, she quickly explained, "I'm not looking for him and I'd never dare cuckold you. Are you drunk?" I'm not drunk," Qin Jin stubbornly said. Li Qiao's expression shifted as she said, "You're not drunk? Then let me test you. What are the names of my parents? The current mother is my stepmother, right? Did Jinhua and Jinyo come with our stepmother? Does Jinhua go to school? What are the names of our eldest sister and second sister and their husbands? How many children does each of their families have?" She had to grasp the basic situation as soon as possible. Qin Jin's memory was not bad. Even in his drunken state he could answer her questions in order. Li Qiao understood. The mother was indeed the stepmother. Her real mother died in childbirth along with the newborn. Jinhua came with the stepmother and was in the same class as her. Both failed to pass the exams. The stepmother only gave birth to Jinyo after marrying into the family. The eldest sister Li Jiaoyang and her husband Song Lin have 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. Li Jiaojiao, her brother-in-law Fong Chaonan have 1 child. She wanted to continue asking questions, but Qin Jin leaned onto her body, causing the bicycle to tilt to one side. Li Qiao took a step back to stabilize herself, reached out her arms to embrace him. How heavy. Looking around, she spotted a few large haystacks not far away. Letting the bike fall, she supported him towards the haystack. She didn't care about cleanliness or tidiness, propped him up against the haystack and prepared to ride the bike back by herself. But the big 28-inch bike was too tall, and her legs couldn't reach the ground as his could. She also couldn't master the skill of pushing and climbing onto the bike at the same time, so she had to leave the bicycle by the haystack and sit beside Qin Jin, feeling the cold wind piercing through her. Wasn't he cold? She reached out to touch the back of his hand. It was very cold. She pulled some straw, planning to cover him with it, only to discover a large hollow space inside the haystack with a thick layer of dry straw at the bottom. She simply dragged him into it to sleep. The wind couldn't get in, but his hands were still cold. Was it because he was wearing thick clothes for sleep that he felt cold? She began to undress his coat to cover him, and after about 10 minutes or so his body temperature had recovered. Li Qiao felt relieved. In the dim surroundings, she gazed at his silhouette and recalled how he had treated her with a certain attitude when he was sober, feeling helplessly weak. Under the same roof, him always being prickly wasn't a solution. She muttered to herself, "I treat you well, can't you be a little nicer to me? My head hurts." "Your head hurts." Li Qiao leaned close to him, extending a hand to gently massage his temples. "Does this feel good? Am I treating you well?" He seemed dissatisfied and grunted, then vomited. A sour and rotten smell permeated the air. Li Qiao was petrified. After snapping out of it, she dragged him out of the hollow in the haystack to another one. After setting him up, she went home for a bowl of hot tea, which had cooled to just the right temperature by the time she returned to the haystack. She woke him to drink it and waited patiently for him to sober up. He finally stirred as the sun started to shift westward, and she spoke with a slight sense of surprise. "You're finally awake." Qin Jin was indeed awake, but he had also remembered her meeting with Kai Hechuan, and anger flared up in an instant. He had given his father-in-law face in her home. But now there was no need, right? He spat out angrily, "Damn, finally? Can't wait for me to die of drunkenness so you can flirt with that Kai surname, huh?" He thought to himself that if she countered with even a word, he would hit her. Instead, she suddenly screamed that a mouse had emerged from the haystack. He followed suit and walked out. He glanced at her sideways. In front of the haystack, she was hopping and jumping about, her red garment making her face look even paler. It added to her already delicate and frail temperament, evoking a feeling of heartbreaking fragility. His eyes suddenly fixated on her. Qiao noticed and felt apprehensive inside. Why was he staring at her? He wasn't going to hit her, was he? She clenched her fists, but a second later she still smiled and said, "You've misunderstood, I have nothing going on with Kai Hechuan. Just now, I was busy taking care of you, massaging your head and giving you warm water to drink." Qin Jin then realized that this time his drunkenness hadn't resulted in a headache or a dry throat, and he had slept without his jacket on. Hearing her say she had nothing to do with Kai Hechuan, he snorted coldly, thinking to himself, "Go deceive someone else." He put his clothes back on and pushed the bike onto the road with Qiao closely following behind. Upon reaching her in-laws' house, Qin Jin returned the borrowed bike, and Qiao moved the books into the house. Old Mrs. Qin asked, Qiao, where did these books come from? Did you bring them from your parental home? Are you planning to repeat your studies? Young people who failed their exams were also planning to repeat their studies, recently looking everywhere for books. Qiao, worried that old Mrs. Qin would object, promised, "I won't let it interfere with work when it's busy." Old Mrs. Qin smiled and said, "Studying is a good thing. Jin did really well at school when he was younger, but it was unfortunately wasted. It's a pity. You'll have to return to school to repeat the year if you want a chance of passing the exam, and you certainly won't be able to work. I won't let you work while Jin is with me." Chapter 4. Look down on Qiao was deeply moved, finding it rare for old Mrs. Qin to be so open-minded. It was naturally good to be able to return to school for a systematic education. "I just don't know if Jin agrees." "It doesn't matter if he doesn't agree," old Mrs. Qin declared forcefully. Qiao chuckled sincerely and called the other person grandma, promising, "Once I've made something of myself, I'll definitely take good care of you. If you really want to take good care of me, give me a great-grandson," old Mrs. Qin said, seizing the opportunity. Qiao. "But there's no such thing as a free lunch after all." She hastily agreed, "Okay." Old Mrs. Qin, having received the satisfactory answer, beamed with joy. When Qin Jin returned, he was holding a string of sparrows in his left hand and a plump gray rabbit in his right. He sat down by the well to clean them. A tiny sparrow had its neck slit by him, then he skinned it starting from the incision. The skin and muscle were somewhat connected and he tore them apart with his bare hands. Watching this sent shivers down her spine. After a long silence she said, "You're so cruel." "Cruel? You better not eat it later." Qiao hugged the rabbit tightly. "I won't let you kill this rabbit." "Qin Jin, put my rabbit down." Qiao looked to old Mrs. Qin for support, and old Mrs. Qin decreed that since it was alive, they should keep it. Qin Jin, frustrated, pounded his fist. "The meat is right in front of me and I can't eat it. Isn't this killing me?" Old Mrs. Qin whispered, "You can eat your wife. Bring the stove from my room and the pot for boiling water to your place tonight." Qin Jin was shocked. "Cook her in the stove? Murder is illegal, you know." Old Mrs. Qin got a fright. When had she ever instigated him to cook his wife? She thought and thought but didn't know how to explain. So she simply spoke to Qiao. Qiao blushed and agreed, since there was no way Grandma could supervise what happened inside their room anyway. Before long, the aroma of the baked sparrows wafted into the house, making Qiao swallow her saliva in spite. How sinful. After they were done, old Mrs. Qin brought her 2 skewers. Qiao, there's nothing much at home, eat these while they're hot to replenish yourself," she said. Qiao shook her head. "Grandma, you take them away, I don't want to eat." "Leave them here and eat them when you feel like it," old Mrs. Qin said as she left. Qiao couldn't help but look at the skewered meat, her mouth watering. She quickly averted her eyes. Qin Jin walked in and picked up a skewer, murmuring, "If you won't eat, I will." "Qiao, given your attitude towards me, I can't let you eat it. Put it down quickly or don't blame me for telling Grandma on you." Qin Jin. What about his attitude? Why didn't she reflect on herself for a change? In the end, he still put down the skewer. Qiao, smelling the delicious scent and feeling her stomach rumble, couldn't resist grabbing a skewer and taking a bite when no one was around. Upon tasting it, her eyes widened. It was really good. It was tender and flavorful. After finishing one, she picked up the other, but seeing Qin Jin coming into the room, she quickly hid it. The door creaked open. Li Qiao and he locked eyes, and he suddenly burst out laughing. Li Qiao was puzzled. You say you won't eat, yet here you are sneaking a taste and getting all dirty. Li Qiao, realizing what he meant, turned away in embarrassment, wiping her mouth, only to indeed find a bit of black ash. Help! There goes her ladylike image. She might as well throw caution to the wind. Picking up the other skewer, she started munching. A hypocritical, gluttonous cat, he accused. Li Qiao hung her head in silence, unable to refute. As dusk fell, old Mrs. Qin urged Li Qiao and Qin Jin to wash up and go to bed. Li Qiao was on her period and her stomach was uncomfortable. The pad she was using was also irritating. A punch from Kai Hechuan had left a bruise, and when she lay down on the hard bed, it just happened to rub against the sore spot. She couldn't find a comfortable position to sleep, tossing and turning. Qin Jin yelled, "You wriggle around like a maggot. All the warmth we've gathered has been wasted by you. Are you even going to sleep or not?" Frightened, Li Qiao dared not move anymore and closed her eyes to force herself to sleep, when she suddenly smelled a foul odor. Was it him farting? She covered her nose. The air suddenly smells bad. Isn't it from the rabbit you insisted on keeping? I said to kill it, but you wouldn't allow it. He grumbled profusely. Li Qiao, enduring the cold, got out of bed in the dark to check, and sure enough it was the rabbit. After cleaning up, she moved the hutch towards the door before crawling back into bed to get warm. Hey, you're too cold, don't touch me. Where are you reaching with those paws? The space is just so small, it's hard for me not to touch you, Li Qiao said, almost in tears. Here she was, a grown girl who hadn't complained about being at a disadvantage, but the man with the hooligan reputation was making a big fuss, as if she had taken great advantage of him. Qin Jin turned to the side. With this, the space should be bigger, right? Li Qiao. Old Mrs. Qin pressed her ear against the wall, eavesdropping. The darn kid, how could he be so clueless? He wouldn't even let a girl snuggle up to him in the same bed. Would she ever have the chance to hold a great-grandson? There was no sound from the room for a long time until she took a flashlight and shone it toward the next door window, but could only see Qin Jin, sleeping soundly with his face turned away. How could he sleep with a beautiful wife beside him? The next day, Li Qiao woke up to find the person beside her entangled around her like an octopus. He had clamored about not wanting her to touch him, yet he took his chance when she was asleep. What kind of person does that? She moved his arms and legs away, got dressed, and opened the door. The cold wind carried in a few scattered snowflakes as she stepped out, the ground outside covered in a thick layer of snow. Her field of view was a vast expanse of white. Sitting atop the thatched roofs, it was a sight of poetic charm. Had it snowed last night? As Li Qiao washed up and brushed her teeth, old Mrs. Qin also opened her door. She greeted her. "Good morning, Grandma." "Morning, oh," old Mrs. Qin replied with a beaming smile. "Did you sleep well last night?" "Well." Back in her room, Li Qiao applied facial oil and glanced at the man still in bed. Taking the rabbit hutch outside, she deliberately covered the cage with straw for insulation. After thoroughly cleaning the house, she noticed there was still a smell lingering, so she found some dried mugwort to fumigate the place. Then she joined old Mrs. Qin in sweeping the yard and the snow by the door and worked together to start a fire for cooking. Seeing that she had stuffed the stove with firewood and it was belching black smoke, old Mrs. Qin shouted into the house for Qin Jin. "Jin, come start the fire." "Jin." Li Qiao was extremely embarrassed, as it was her first time not being able to manage the traditional stove properly. Woken up by the noise, Qin Jin complained, "People with wives get served a cooked meal to their table. How come I got a wife and still have to serve her?" "You're talking about someone else's wife. Your own wife needs your care. Not to mention Qiao needs to study for university." Scratching his head in irritation, Qin Jin retorted, "She won't be able to study crap. Counting on her to go to university is like expecting a pig to climb a tree." Li Qiao. "Look who's being condescended." Qin Jin appeared in the yard, yawning as he made the fire, while Li Qiao secretly observed how to add the firewood properly. The brigade sent someone to notify about the heavy snow blocking roads. Each household was to send one person to help clear the snow off the roads, earning them 12 points. During the busy agricultural season, A labor model could only earn 10 points. Clearing the snow was much more worthwhile. Qin Jin readily agreed to go, but as he was about to leave, Li Qiao suddenly felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, unbearable enough that she swallowed her pride and explained the situation. Old Mrs. Qin became somewhat anxious. Why didn't you say you were on your period? You must have gotten cold from getting up early to work. Women need to keep warm during these days. Jean, quickly take Qiao Qiao to the health clinic to check. Qin Jin was reluctant to miss out on the points, but Li Qiao's face was indeed very pale, and she had beads of sweat on her forehead. He had noticed it the day before, thinking she was upset by the scolding from that Kai hag. He dropped the line, "You are really a nuisance," as he left the yard, and after about 7 or 8 minutes, returned to carry Li Qiao, who could no longer walk, to the health clinic. Resting on his back, Li Qiao felt exceedingly guilty. She knew the importance of going to work in the fields. Him working a day meant a day's food for the family, yet she had failed at a critical moment. "Are you tired? I feel better and can walk on my own." She noticed that the scarf around his neck had loosened, so she reached out and tightened it for him. Qin Jin was scorched by the warmth of her fingertips, and a strange sensation rose up in his heart. It had been like this last night. As soon as she touched him, he would feel an unbearable restlessness all over his body. This inexplicable feeling caused panic, and he scolded, "Don't mess around. Li Qiao. So fierce." Arriving at the clinic, the doctor asked her a few questions, gave her a hot water bottle, and told her to fill it with hot water in the evening to warm her stomach. The doctor also urged her to drink more brown sugar water before sending her off. Li Qiao walked back home and heard voices as she approached. They were coming from old Mrs. Qin's room. She said, "Grandma, we're back." Old Mrs. Qin opened the door and called Li Qiao into the room, asking with concern, "What did the doctor say?" Li Qiao first greeted the grandmas and sisters-in-law seated there, then relayed the doctor's instructions. Old Mrs. Qin then ordered Qin Jin to make the brown sugar water. "Qin Jin, does she not have hands?" Peng Chunhua, another newly arrived daughter-in-law in the village, laughed and said, "Qiao Qiao is really blessed to have married Jin. She doesn't have to do anything and even has someone to take care of her. Unlike me, getting up early in the morning to prepare meals for the whole family, serving the men and shoveling snow. Today Jin missing work is a big loss." The implication was that Li Qiao was lazy and a hindrance, unlike herself, who was virtuous and brought prosperity to her husband. Old Mrs. Qin picked up on it and countered without leaving a trace. "Qiao Qiao's fate is incomparable to your hard-working life." Peng Chunhua was choked up. Li Qiao snickered. "Li Qiao. The brown sugar water is ready." Qin Jin called her by her full name. "Coming." Li Qiao went to the next room to drink the brown sugar water. The bland sweetness spread out from her tongue, and the ordinary sugar water tasted surprisingly delicious in her mouth. Thinking back to her previous life of luxurious clothing and exquisite food, and now to her barely satisfied hunger, her nose soured and tears couldn't stop flowing. Qin Jin scoffed, "It's not even hot, why cry?" Li Qiao sobbed softly, "You're too fierce. I didn't mean to hold you back from work." Qin Jin's eyes widened in surprise, pointing at himself. Fierce? He had missed work, but what did he say? The evildoer complains first. It was cold outside and he had gone into the river to save someone, not only to receive no praise but also to be falsely accused. It didn't matter to be falsely accused. He had a green hat on his head. Even with the green hat, he still had to serve her as if she were a revered ancestor. The more he thought about it, the more angry he became. Rolling up his sleeves, he threatened, "Like crying, do you? I'll give you a couple of slaps to make sure you cry more heartily." Li Qiao immediately fell silent out of fear, her tearful eyes looking at him with a grievance, her face still wet with tears. Before they were married, he had seen her cry too, pressing her eyes tight together to squeeze out tears and shouting at him shamelessly, calling him a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. The person in front of him seemed to have changed. When she cried, she didn't blink, allowing her tears to fall freely, pitiful and naive in a way that evoked compassion. No matter his attitude, she never cursed at him and would even greet him with a smile. Somewhere along the line, he began to feel distressed for her. Outside, someone called for Qin Jin, snapping him back to reality. A girl shows good attitude and he feels distressed, isn't that just masochistic? He let out another cold snort and walked out the door. After calming her emotions, Li Qiao finished the remaining brown sugar water and filled a hot water bottle to warm her stomach. Then she sat down at the desk and opened her books, knowing that only by studying hard could she leave this place. She had roughly flipped through the books and made a study plan suited for herself. She dove into it, and before she knew it, a day had passed. In the evening, Li Qiao noticed the rabbit tearing at its own fur and thought it had gone mad. She quickly pointed it out to old Mrs. Qin. Old Mrs. Qin, with her extensive experience, joyfully said, "The rabbit is going to give birth. It's good we didn't eat it yesterday." The granddaughter and grandmother waited for over 2 hours, and the gray rabbit gave birth to 3 soft and pink little baby rabbits. Li Qiao loves it so much, it's so cute. It's too late, she yawns and returns to her room to wash up and go to bed. She wakes up in the middle of the night to find no one beside her. Was she captured again? Just as she is about to go back to sleep, the door creaks open and the young man, covered in cold dew, strips off his clothes and heads straight for the bed. Li Qiao holds down the blanket. "You're not even washing your feet. You scared the hell out of me." Qin Jin says nonchalantly, "What does it matter to you if I wash my feet or not? You don't have to smell them." Li Qiao sighs helplessly, "I can't stand you, you're really rude." Qin Jin flares up. "Kai Hechuan isn't rude, then why didn't he want you? Don't think just because old Mrs. Qin is nice to you that you can be so self-important. Do you really think she cares about you? Isn't she just considering my face? Just wait and see. If you don't have a child within 2 years, she will drive you out of the house." Li Qiao cries out of anger. The whimpers, like those of a small, abandoned creature, make Qin Jin's heart wrench in discomfort. What's gotten into him? Her accusations against him were even harsher than this. In the tranquil environment, the soft, barely audible sobs strike his heart like a drum. He can't take it anymore and softens his tone. "Okay, I'll go wash, is that better?" Feeling extremely wronged, Li Qiao nonetheless manages a faint nod, constrained by her circumstances. "I'm totally cursed to have you for a wife." Li Qiao thinks to herself she's the one who's even more cursed, hearing a soft rustling noise as he clearly slides into bed. Qin Jin hisses, "Your feet are as cold as ice out there." If anyone dares to say in front of him that a wife's bed is warm, he would never let it go. Li Qiao silently moves her legs away, turns her back to him and closes her eyes to sleep. But in just a few seconds, the young man suddenly presses against her back. Li Qiao struggles lightly and he immediately lets go. It's not long before his arms and legs wrap around her and his face leans onto her neck. She pushes him away with her elbow, but he simply grabs her hand and holds it down. She says huffily, "You despise me and yet you hug me. What exactly do you want?" After a long wait with no response, she turns her head to find him asleep. Li Qiao is exasperated. Falls asleep in a second and uses me as a pillow. In the morning when Li Qiao wakes up, there's no one beside her. She doesn't see him at breakfast either, and to show concern she asks old Mrs. Qin about him. Old Mrs. Qin responds, "He's such a big guy. Why do you need to worry about him?" Alright, if grandma isn't worried then she won't worry either. The sun rises higher. Li Qiao moves a stool to the doorway to sit and read in the sun. "Wow, you're really studious." Li Qiao looks up to see Ping Chunhua, who had come by for a visit the day before, stepping into the courtyard. She looks around and asks, "Is old Mrs. Qin not at home?" "Hello, sister-in-law, grandma has gone visiting." Li Qiao closes her book, goes inside and brings out another stool. "Please take a seat." Right after Ping Chunhua sits down, the production team leader comes by to remind her to notify Qin Jin not to forget to feed the pigs and clean the sty tomorrow. "Jin went out today. I don't know if he'll be back tonight. Can I do it?" Li Qiao says. "Of course." Li Qiao then inquires about the location of the pig farm, says goodbye to the team leader, and chats leisurely with Ping Chunhua. Before long, she has a clear understanding of the collective's division of labor and the relationships between different households. In this village, aside from the educated youth, only the Qin family and the Zhou family at the west end of the village are outsiders. The rest are all surnamed Feng, hence the village is named Feng Family Village, but even those with the surname Feng have varying degrees of kinship. While mentioning this, Ping Chunhua says with a touch of pride, "My father-in-law and the head of the commune are brothers. I was even matched with Qin Jin from your family at one point. My father disapproved of the match, saying the Qin family was too poor and had a bad reputation, that they wouldn't amount to much. He disagreed and I ended up marrying into this village after all. I feel a little guilty seeing him around. Li Qiao didn't understand why the other party was telling her all this. Was she bragging about marrying into a good family? Or implying that Qin Jin was a bad choice, and it was only after being rejected by others that it became Li Qiao's turn? To avoid an awkward silence, she replied with a smile. Blind dating isn't like calling off a wedding. What's there to feel sorry about? Besides, it's a good thing your dad didn't agree, or else where would I be? As for success, don't despise the poverty of a young scholar. Who can tell the future? But she didn't say this to avoid it being passed around and turned into a joke. Peng Chunhua was stunned. Wasn't it said that the girl was unwilling to marry Qin Jin? Knowing that Qin Jin had been her leftover choice, shouldn't she at least make a fuss and have a go at Qin Jin? After Peng Chunhua left, Li Qiao went to see the rabbits, which had grown a layer of gray fur overnight. A while later, old Mrs. Qin came back and brought up the matter of feeding the pigs. Old Mrs. Qin, suffering from a herniated disc, could not lift heavy objects to help Li Qiao and reminded her to change into an old set of clothes. The grandmother and granddaughter made sporadic small talk until old Mrs. Qin took a rest afternoon. Then Li Qiao locked the main door and shut herself in the room to review. The day passed like this and Qin Jin did not return home all night. Early the next day, Li Qiao asked old Mrs. Qin again. Old Mrs. Qin gave the same response. He is grown up, why should we worry about him? Fine then. If her grandma wasn't worried, neither was she. After organizing her language textbooks, she followed the team leader's instructions to go to the pigsty to boil water and mix it with bran to feed the pigs. And then she waited for the pigs to finish eating before cleaning their pen. By the time she finished, the sun was already high in the sky. Li Qiao casually wiped the sweat from her forehead and sighed at how hardworking people really had it tough. Once the recorder checked and gave her 2 work points, she completed her task for the morning. She found a sunny, windless haystack to sit on and pulled out a book to read softly. After becoming more proficient, she closed the book and recited it from memory, then used a stick to write it out on the ground. Who is this girl? She looks unfamiliar, came a crisp female voice from the side. She's Loser Qin's daughter-in-law. I went to their wedding festivities just a few days ago. Li Qiao raised her chin to see a group of vibrant young people. You've graduated from high school, right? Are you planning to retake the exam? How many points did you score this year? Li Qiao couldn't remember. Not many. Did any of you get in? No, I've only just graduated from middle school. College entrance exam questions are too tough. Principal Han and Wang Nannan finished high school, but neither of them passed the exam this time either, so everyone's planning to retake the exam after some more studying. My name is Li Qiao and I'm pleased to meet you all. Li Qiao stood up and said generously, let's exchange more in the future. I'm Du Xinxin from the youth team of the Educated Youth. Let me introduce you properly. This is Han Ting, the temporary principal of the village primary school. His name is Zhou Qing, studied mechanics, a pioneer worker of the team. This is Wang Nannan and Lu Jing. And just like that, a group of young people got to know each other. Learning that Li Qiao was not familiar with the village, they enthusiastically helped her with information about the village. Li Qiao also learned the location of the county town's bookstore and visited it with them. Borrowing a couple of review materials from Han Ting and Wang Nannan, she shared her own study methods out of gratitude and offered to prepare study notes for them to refer to in a few days. Han Ting's eyes brightened while Wang Nannan looked unimpressed. How good could the study methods and notes be from someone who also failed the exams? Li Qiao left the youth point and returned to the pigsty to finish her chores and continue memorizing. The village had no electricity and the kerosene lamp was too dim. Any bit of memorization she could do during the day counted. After a busy day, when she got home, old Mrs. Qin asked if she was tired. Li Qiao lied that she wasn't tired and went to her room to hug her quilt and sleep. After the day's labor, her sleep was especially sweet. She didn't dream at all and awoke naturally. After stretching lazily and tidying up a bit, she plunged back into her intense revision. Day after day passed, and by the 23rd day of the 12th lunar month, the festival of Xiaonian, Qin Jin still had not returned. Li Qiao couldn't help but worry. As a child, she had heard her grandparents talk about how there were especially many bad people in the 70s and 80s. He wasn't killed in retaliation for causing trouble, was he? Old Mrs. Qin handed her a bag of gifts. Qiao, with the new year approaching, you need to go back to your parents' home to deliver gifts. Jean has disappeared again. You'll have to go on your own. Li Qiao took the netted bag which contained tobacco, liquor, eggs and meat. She didn't understand. They usually couldn't bear to eat these products themselves. Why wouldn't they just keep them? Old Mrs. Qin urged her, go early and return soon. Yeah, Li Qiao said as she walked off with the gifts. Just as she left the village, she ran into Zhou Qing driving a tractor with Han Ting seated behind him. They learned she was heading to Tulu village. What a coincidence, we can give you a lift on our way. Li Qiao thanked them and climbed onto the vehicle. As it started moving, the wind picked up, so she unwrapped her scarf to cover her head. Han Ting took the initiative to ask about her exam preparation. The tractor's engine was thunderous, so Li Qiao had to lean in to hear him. Peng Chunhua just happened to see this as she passed by. Recently, Li Qiao had been frequently visiting the youth center. Chunhua had seen her several times and told old Mrs. Qin, who simply brushed her off, even asking Principal Han to inquire about preparatory classes. Principal Han took on the task right away. Now look at that, even the daughter-in-law was all wrapped up by them. They were almost kissing already. Meanwhile, Li Qiao was unaware she was being watched and laughed. You're asking about my review? I feel it's going all right. Are you free this afternoon? We could go together to the county bookshop to buy some study materials to do some practice. She had basically finished the main subjects, but hadn't done many exercises. Practice questions? Li Qiao explained, it means doing more exercises. Oh, Han Ting smiled, revealing 2 canine teeth. I can't today, how about tomorrow? Sure, let's settle on that then. Amichung. After that, the two did not converse further until Zhou Qing stopped the tractor. Li Qiao looked up and realized they had reached the entrance of the village. She took 2 large candies out of her pocket and forcefully put one in each of their hands. Thank you, goodbye. Both men laughed and waved to her as the tractor continued onward. Li Qiao, carrying the gifts, just happened to run into Kai Hechuan and He Chirong at the village entrance. The former sneaked glimpses at her. The latter loathed her and immediately started hurling insults. Running home all day long, trying all ways to seduce my son, shameless hussy. Mom, don't talk too much. Kai Hechuan was silent at first, which only made He Chirong shout more gleefully. I'll say what I want. With eyes so shallow and a butt so deep, a face without a hint of flesh, you have a heart more venomous than a viper. Failing to get into university yourself, you're looking for a college student to get your hands on rationed grain. Aspiring to jump from the branch to the phoenix perch. Aren't you lovely? Li Qiao couldn't make heads or tails of the first part of the rhyme, but it didn't sound like anything good. In retaliation she spat, old witch. You speak as if you wiped your mouth with fixative this early in the morning. Your son might be a treasure in your eyes, but to me he's just a dirt-dumb old man. Who the hell covets his rationed grain? Eating the Qin family's mixed grain porridge was enough for her to grow flesh. Kai Hechuan couldn't believe she would confront his mother and insult him by calling him old and earthy. Offended, he said, Qiao Qiao, is that how you speak to my mother? You owe her an apology. Li Qiao was stunned. Thankfully the old lady had not agreed to their marriage. This kind of man was simply dreadful. Crazy. He Chirong was so angry she stuttered, you, little wretched girl. Li Qiao mocked her, me. You stuttering old hag. Finally venting her anger, she turned and ran. He Chirong wanted to chase after her, but Kai Hechuan held her back. Mom, we haven't even given the gift yet. I'll deal with her later. He Chirong hissed through clenched teeth. Kai Hechuan also thought it necessary to have a proper talk with Li Qiao. Openly defying his elder, was she not planning to be with him anymore? When Li Qiao returned home, she originally planned to leave right after setting down her things. But her stepmother retained her with insincere courtesy. Then Jinhua pulled her into the room for a private chat. The conversation revolved around Kai Hechuan. For instance, he had 2 blind dates in half a month, each with family conditions better than hers. For instance, he planned to bring her along for the new school year, to rent a place near the school. Jinhua waited for Li Qiao to be sorrowful and desolate, waiting for her to turn sadness into joy. But she was expressionless. Third sister, what's wrong with you? Heartbroken to the point of stupidity. Li Qiao brooded for a moment and sighed, what can sadness change? I've realized that since I'm already married, I shouldn't have any entanglements with Kai Hechuan. Li Qiao's transformation caught Jinhua by surprise, who criticized while stunned. I've been worried sick about your affair, even considering using the money I've been saving for a long time to help you. I didn't expect you to back out in the end. Li Qiao's gaze gradually sharpened. So you want me to elope with him and be the talk of Tulu village? Make our parents lose face? Jinhua felt guilty. Of course not. What are you two sisters up to in the room? It's time to eat. Dong Lame knocked on the door. Yeah. Li Qiao was the first to leave the room. Jinhua was entangled with Li Qiao's change, articulate and sharp, a little unlike the Li Qiao from her memories. If she didn't go with Kai Hechuan, how could she marry Qin Jin and become a rich wife? Jinhua carefully recalled the juicy gossip between Li Qiao and Kai Hechuan from her previous life. She indeed remembered something. In the first year of her marriage with Qin Jin, Li Qiao wore a red coat back to her parental home to visit relatives and was seen diving into a haystack at the entrance of the village with Kai Hechuan that very afternoon. This rumor reached Qin Jin's ears. Li Qiao was beaten black and blue, crying and demanding proof, and that he should confront the rumor spreader. Li Qiao had somebody specify the exact time slot when she and Kai Hechuan entered the haystack. The person could not and instead was accused by Li Qiao of spreading rumors. In the end, the matter fizzled out without consequence. This time she directly called Qin Jin to catch them in the act. By then, even if Li Qiao didn't run off with Kai Hechuan, Qin Jin would have to divorce her. Wouldn't her opportunity come? After the meal, Li Qiao left her parents' home and started back toward Feng family village the same way she had come. She had just left the village when someone called out to her. It was Kai Hechuan, dressed in a sharp outfit, hair meticulously combed, pushing a bicycle like a refined intellectual. Li Qiao laughed, bending over. Was this get-up especially for her to see? You're still able to laugh. Kai Hechuan criticized with dissatisfaction. My mother is almost angered to death by you. What the hell is your problem? You don't want to be with me anymore, is that it? After having her laugh, Li Qiao became serious again. It seems I wasn't clear enough during my return visit. Kai Hechuan, recalling how Li Qiao took a punch for Qin Jin, his face turned red and green with anger. Finally he managed to squeeze out. My mother wasn't wrong. You're not worth marrying. Li Qiao rolled her eyes. How grown up and still needing mommy to differentiate right from wrong, pathetic. Thanks to your mother for sparing me the marriage. She walked away briskly. Kai Hechuan clenched his teeth. Was that a jibe? Li Qiao, you'll regret it. Li Qiao whistled. She'd regret nothing. Kai Hechuan was anguished. She had even learned to whistle like a hooligan. Cursed loser Qin corrupting good people. Could she have slept with loser Qin too? Realizing this, a vein throbbed on his forehead as he cursed, flirt. Li Qiao didn't hear clearly, nor did she want to ask. After walking a bit more, she looked back to see Kai Hechuan's silhouette, riding his bike while still trying to manage his hair ruffled by the wind. Oh, original host, look at the man you loved. Vain and preening. Changing into 2 sets of brand new clothes a day but too stingy to gift a pair of warm gloves, causing me to suffer along with you. So cold. No money to buy gloves, no man to warm them, so I'll just tuck my hands in my pockets. A national highway lies between Tulu village and Feng family village. Li Qiao came to the roadside and stopped to look around when she saw a minibus about 10 meters away. She planned to wait for the minibus to pass before crossing, but the vehicle stopped right in front of her. The door opened and a person descended. It was Qin Jin, who had disappeared for half a month. Dressed in black, tall and upright. Carrying a large bag, she exclaimed in surprise, Jin, where have you been these days? What, you missed me? Qin Jin was not behaving properly. Li Qiao candidly said, yes. Mainly because when he wasn't home, the production team's tasks that involved lifting heavy objects all fell to her, which was too much to bear. Also, there was the matter of buying review materials. She was worrying about how to approach old Mrs. Qin for help, but with him there was less psychological pressure. Qin Jin was taken aback. The tips of his ears gradually reddened and his heartbeat became erratic. He had fled outward because she had irritated him, and now that he just returned, she had upset him again. A troublemaker. He said with a harsh tone, You miss me? Why are you here? Did you go back to your mother's house to meet your lover? Li Qiao felt wronged. I really missed you. If you don't believe me, you can ask Grandma. I frequently asked her where you went. Going back to my mother's house was to deliver gifts before the new year. She added with emphasis, I didn't see Kai Hechuan, can you please not say such unpleasant things? The young girl's eyebrows and eyes drooped slightly, her voice soft, filled with helplessness. Qin Jin felt a tightness in his chest and couldn't help but reflect on whether he had been too aggressive. But he still insisted on being tough. The more you say you didn't see him, the more certain I am that you did. You'd better not let me catch you red-handed. Li Qiao was annoyed, but she needed his help for something important and couldn't afford to fall out with him, so she patiently repeated, I really didn't see him. She pointed to his bag. What's in there that's so big and bulging? None of your business. Li Qiao offered to help him carry some of the things. No need. The young man had long legs and a quick stride. Li Qiao had to jog to keep up with him. From a distance she saw Peng Chunhua and old Mrs. Qin, and a group of women gathering by her home's wall. Qin Jin pulled Li Qiao aside. You go ahead and send the people at the door away. Li Qiao didn't understand. Her gaze fell on the package in his hand. Did it contain something shameful, afraid of being seen by others? She'd ask about it later. Obediently she responded with an aha, and continued back. Peng Chunhua with sharp eyes spotted her and laughed mockingly. Oh, look who's back, the future college student. Sister-in-law, you flatter me too much. Li Qiao approached and greeted the other aunties as well. This morning I saw you at the village entrance with Zhou, the educated youth, and Principal Han. What were you three up to? Peng Chunhua deliberately said this in front of everyone, keenly observing old Mrs. Qin's reaction. But old Mrs. Qin was only concerned about whether Li Qiao had had lunch or not, which disappointed her greatly. I did. Li Qiao answered frankly. I went back to my mother's house to deliver gifts. They were passing Tulu village with their walking tractor, so I hitched a ride. Grandma, I have something to discuss with you, let's go inside to talk. What's the matter that you must talk about inside? Old Mrs. Qin smiled at the neighbors. I'm not chatting today, all right? Peng Chunhua and a few others also said they were going home. After shutting the front door, Li Qiao lowered her voice. Jean is back, hiding with a big bag near the threshing field haystacks. Old Mrs. Qin finally felt relieved, as the young rascal had left a message about making money for a prosperous year and been gone for half a month. It had her worrying all day long. After about 5 minutes, the front door opened. Qin Jin stepped into the courtyard and turned to bolt the main gate. Old Mrs. Qin came forward and thumped him. You rascal, where have you been? Don't you know your family is worried sick? Qin Jin clasped old Mrs. Qin's hands, grinning impishly. I'm back now, aren't I? He entered the room and opened the bag. Li Qiao spotted flour and meat along with small treats like honey cakes. Where did he get them from? These days it had been nothing but thin porridge or coarse grains. She had almost forgotten what noodles and bread tasted like. So tempting. At the bottom of the bag there was a paper package which Qin Jin took out and threw onto the bed. This is for you. Li Qiao was pleasantly shocked. He usually glared or scolded her, making her think he really disliked her, so she never expected him to prepare a gift for her. Opening it, she found a red coat. It felt soft to the touch and the style was nice too, with a tag in traditional characters on it. An export order? Grandma, this is yours, said Qin Jin as he took out a bigger bag. A brand new outfit of cotton-padded clothes. Old Mrs. Qin turned it over and over, thrilled. It wasn't stolen, was it? Do I look like that kind of person? Old Mrs. Qin gestured with the clothes. You can never tell. After all, everyone calls you loser Qin. Li Qiao couldn't help but snort with laughter, saying what she had in mind. Qin Jin glared at her and then said to the old lady, Aren't you my grandma? Think better of me. Qin Jin took out all the items from the bag and handed old Mrs. Qin a stack of grain tickets and pork tickets. Old Mrs. Qin couldn't contain her joy. With these they could have a prosperous new year. Qin Jin unwrapped a honey cake and lifted it to old Mrs. Qin's lips. Delicious, said old Mrs. Qin after taking a bite. Li Qiao, thick-skinned, stepped forward to take one too. The outer crust was flaky, the honey sweet and light, and it was soft without sticking to the teeth. You two sweethearts haven't seen each other for a while. Surely you have lots to talk about. I won't disturb you. Old Mrs. Qin gathered the tickets and the clothes, took the flour and meat and left the room, planning to chop stuffing and wrap wontons that evening. The room was left with just the two of them. Li Qiao got tired of the sweets after 2 pieces, stopped eating and sat at the desk to read. Qin Jin prepared to sleep. He had been busy collecting and selling old stuff in the streets and alleys and was dead tired. He had just removed his shoes when Qiao turned to look at his feet. He put them back on, deciding to wash up before bed, so as not to make her cry and scold him for being uncouth. Cleaned and washed, he crawled into bed. The interior and exterior exuded a faint fragrance that was refreshing and uplifting. Having a wife really was different. Even the bed smelled lovely. He closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep in the next second. He was awakened by the sound of chopping on a cutting board. The sky outside was tinged with a layer of red glow. Qiao was still sitting at the desk by the window reading. Did she do this every single day? Studying hard and still not getting into university, what a pig's brain. Repeating a year was futile. He got up and dressed. Qiao, hearing the noise, smiled back. You're awake. Jin, obviously. If you always study at home, how do you figure out the things you don't understand? Ask the educated youth. I hardly come across something I don't understand. I exchange books with them mainly. You know Principal Han, right? He usually comes to me for advice. Jin laughed heartily. You're teaching him with your skills? Without your help he might just succeed next year. With your tutoring it's completely hopeless. Qiao. She grew red-eyed with annoyance. You big bully looking down on people. Jin, afraid she might burst into tears the next second, softened his heart and offered her food. Qiao pushed it aside. Grandma's chopping stuffing for the wontons. I need to save space in my stomach for them. Jin. She's got quite the temper. He stepped out and made a beeline for old Mrs. Qin, who ordered him to knead the dough. He heard a faint squeaking and glanced towards the rabbit cage involuntarily. The rabbits haven't been fed yet? Old Mrs. Qin, Qiao is quite fond of them. The night before you left, the rabbit had 3 babies. That girl often picks up unwanted vegetable leaves to wash and feed them. These past 2 days, the baby rabbits have started to eat veggies too. Jin stepped forward and parted the straw on the rabbit cage. The rabbits were all plump and looked rather cute. The sun's afterglow gradually faded and the room darkened. Qiao closed the book and stepped out of the room, moving to the kitchen to help wrap wontons. Oh, the wontons Qiao wraps look so neat, just like little ingots. How do you wrap them? Old Mrs. Qin asked curiously. Qiao demonstrated once. Old Mrs. Qin memorized the steps immediately, and her wontons turned out even more uniform than Qiao's. Qiao gave a thumbs up. You're so clever. Old Mrs. Qin smiled. Clever? This isn't something that taxes the mind. Jin teased. She might have practiced for a long time to find your quick learning clever. Qiao. Did she look that stupid? The wontons were cooked and the family gathered around the table to eat. Qiao picked one up to taste, its skin thin and tender, the pinkish-red meat filling faintly visible. Biting into it, it was especially soft. The soup left a fragrant aftertaste in her mouth. Who would have thought that a simple bowl of wontons could have so many flavors? Knock, knock, knock. The front door was knocked on. Old Mrs. Qin, it's me. Chunhua. Sitting closest to the door, Qiao responded, coming. She went forward to remove the door latch. Peng Chunhua saw that she still held chopsticks. Are you in the middle of dinner? Qiao, feeling awkward, hid her hand behind her back. Yes. Sister-in-law, what's up? Peng Chunhua explained her purpose. Feng Guangguan from the east side of the village is getting married tomorrow. The person in charge asked me to call a few people to come over in the morning and help prepare the food. You're free tomorrow, right? Unfortunately, I've already made plans to go into town with Principal Han and the others to buy review materials. Qiao actually wanted to help, since after the banquet she could get some wedding candies. Never mind then. Peng Chunhua sniffed. There seems to be a meaty smell in your yard. Where did you get the tickets for buying meat? Qiao followed the scent. Indeed, there was a delicious smell of meat. Today Jean came back with a large piece of pork. Grandma just stewed lard. She pointed to the lard scraps on the chopping board in the kitchen. You should try it, it's very flaky. It was just too greasy. Peng Chunhua's eyes lit up. Jean is back, eh? Haven't seen him for a while. Where is he? Inside the house. Do you want to see him? Peng Chunhua was embarrassed and spoke sternly. How could you say that? Why would I want to see him? What if someone heard? She walked away. Qiao was innocent. Wasn't it you who said it's been a while? She saw Peng Chunhua off. Old Mrs. Qin chuckled softly in the house. Qiao is quite humorous. Just answer whatever she asks. What if she asked what else you brought? Wouldn't you have blurted it all out? Idiot, Qin Jin scolded. She's called honest, you slicky. Qin Jin. The sky darkened. Li Qiao tidied up and washed up. As she went outside to throw out the water, a head poking out of the adjacent alley frightened her out of her wits. She cried out in alarm. Ah. It's me, third sister. Li Qiao clutched her chest. You scared me to death. What are you doing here so late? Li Jinhua wiped away tears. I have nowhere else to go. What happened? Li Qiao asked, concerned. Can we talk inside? I'm freezing. Li Jinhua huffed on her hands, hunching her body. Oh, come on in. Li Qiao closed the door and led Li Jinhua into the house. Qin Jin had already laid down, unsure whether to get up or stay put, so he covered his head. Li Jinhua secretly surveyed the room, the walls dark, the floor cracked and dry. There were only a few simple pieces of dowry furniture. Yet it was this penniless boy who would one day become a wealthy magnate possessing countless riches. Jinhua, Li Qiao called her out of her daze. Li Jinhua snapped back to reality, covering her face and sobbing. Dad had someone set me up with a match and I didn't want to marry him, so they beat me. The man was an employee at the supply and marketing cooperative. In her previous life she had married him and for a while they had lived in glory, but when they reached middle age the supply and marketing cooperative dissolved and the man was laid off. Suddenly their household lost their source of income. Their children were disappointments, and with young grandchildren to support, every corner needed money. She had no other choice but to head south with others to work, enduring hardship and exhaustion. As she aged, riddled with illness and aches, she had no desire to relive such days. Li Qiao thought to herself, could conditions be any worse than a loser like in my family? I can't help you with this matter. I will talk to Grandma first so you can stay with her for tonight and have a calm and peaceful talk with your parents tomorrow. Stay with old Mrs. Qin? Or should I go? Li Jinhua. Li Qiao went to look for old Mrs. Qin. In the room there was only Qin Jin covered by the blanket on the bed and Li Jinhua at the desk. Li Jinhua called out, brother-in-law, but got no response. Had he fallen asleep? She looked left and right, her gaze eventually settling on the empty surface of the desk, but seeing nothing. When she noticed Li Qiao coming back, she said, Sis, how come there's not even a comb in your room? There's one. I put it in the box. Li Qiao had a slight obsessive-compulsive disorder. She needed to clear all the odds and ends on the desk before going to bed to feel at ease. I've talked to Grandma. We don't have a spare toothbrush, so you can just wash your feet. There's water in the thermos in the kitchen alcove. Li Qiao opened the chest and took a new quilt to the next room. Old Mrs. Qin asked, Where's your sister? Li Qiao looked back but didn't see Li Jinhua. She's probably in my room getting ready to wash her feet. A thought crossed old Mrs. Qin's mind. With Jean still in the room, why couldn't Jinhua come here to wash her feet? Suddenly, Li Qiao felt the urge to run to the toilet, maybe from not having oily food for a long time, and had a reaction after eating meat. Without time to think it over, she grabbed the toilet paper at the end of the bed and rushed out, calling, Jinhua, I've taken care of everything. After you're done washing, go sleep over at Grandma's. Okay. Old Mrs. Qin waited a long time for Li Jinhua. Unable to sleep steadily, she got dressed and got out of bed. Quietly, she walked to the window of the neighboring room, only to see Li Jinhua sneaking peeks at the door, ensuring no one was around before she reached her hand under the blanket by the bed. Before she could scold anyone, Qin Jin sat up with a dark expression. What are you touching me for? Trying to molest me? Jean, your sister, she's not a virgin anymore, right? She's been sneaking around with Kai Hechuan behind your back. Don't you feel cheated? Take me instead, I'm clean, and I don't mind your bad reputation or that you're poor. Li Jinhua rushed out her confession, thinking Qin Jin would be touched and accept her, but his face darkened with anger. I'm giving you 2 seconds to run. Li Jinhua still wanted to explain, Qin Jin threw off the covers, revealing his close-fitting long johns that accentuated his tall and slim frame. His youthful and handsome face made Jinhua's heart flutter, who had been a widow for half her life, until a sharp slap across her face brought her back to reality. Before she could react, her hair was yanked up and a rough hand covered her mouth, forcing her face against the wall, and a few heavy thuds followed. Her startled screams were muffled, and with pain shooting through her rear, she was kicked out the door. Without time to think, she scampered away in a fluster, propelled by sheer momentum. Old Mrs. Qin was shocked, yet she felt a sense of relief. Qiao, although not her biological sister, was always bustling about for her, and Jinhua dared to repay kindness with ingratitude. She returned to her room, seemingly unconcerned, while Qin Jin also lay back down as if nothing had happened. After Li Qiao came back from the restroom, the room was already devoid of Li Jinhua's presence. She assumed the other was in old Mrs. Qin's room. As she poured water into the basin, a gloomy voice rose. "What are you fussing about instead of sleeping?" Li Qiao bit her lip, feigning distress. "I just squatted in the filthy outhouse, need to wash up." Qin Jin snorted. "You and your pretend cleanliness." Li Qiao pouted. What had she done to him? After getting everything in order, she blew out the oil lamp and crawled into bed, mustering the courage to hold him tight. The rest was up to him. In the evening, old Mrs. Qin specifically reminded herself that she should guide matters. After all, if she was living off someone else's generosity, she should contribute something in return. Above her, a voice filled with the young man's dissatisfaction echoed faintly. "You're purposely siphoning off my warmth, you stupid and selfish woman." Yet, despite his lack of success in life, he couldn't find it in himself to push her away. After all, her waist was so slim, it could be encircled with one hand. Li Qiao held his breath anxiously, but all he did was pinch her waist and then stayed still. She tentatively called out, "Jean?" Aside from her own voice in the room, there was the sound of his long, even breathing. She eventually realized he had fallen asleep. Even after she made such an effort to be forward, how could he remain indifferent? She wasn't ugly. Her conclusion was that he hadn't seen her as a woman at all, but rather like a brother sharing the same sleeping quarters. The next morning, Li Qiao got up bright and early. While feeding the rabbits, Qin Jin squatted down, picked up a bunny by its ears and mused, "It's bound to be delicious roasted." Li Qiao looked at him, her eyes reddening. Qin Jin couldn't stand it and cleared his throat. "I'm only joking." Li Qiao pursed her lips. "I'm going to town with the sent-down youths to buy supplies today. Will you come with me?" If she went with him, she wouldn't have to ask for money. "No." Old Mrs. Qin commanded. "Jean, you should go with her. I don't feel safe with all the people and the chaos in the city." "Good morning, Granny." "Is Jinhua not up yet?" said Li Qiao. Old Mrs. Qin feigned ignorance. "I waited for her last night until I fell asleep and I haven't seen her this morning." Li Qiao said, "She probably went home." Qin Jin couldn't help but chuckle at her naivety. He still should accompany her to the city. He couldn't risk losing a wife so soon after getting married. After breakfast, the two headed toward the village entrance and waited there for about 5 minutes before a group of young people appeared within sight. Li Qiao waved at them. Du Xinxin approached with a teasing remark. "You're even bringing your sweetheart, huh?" Li Qiao smiled in agreement. "Yeah." The group of youths chatted and laughed all the way to the road intersection. Lil 3rd. Turning her head slightly, Li Qiao recognized Dong Lamei calling her from across the street, with Li Jinhua wrapped up tightly beside her. She asked in surprise, "Mom Jinhua, where are you two off to this early in the morning?" Dong Lamei's face visibly turned angry. "It's your sister's doing. She got in a huff with me and your father last night and ran off. When she came back, she was bruised up, saying she'd fallen into a ditch. This morning she said she can't hear out of one of her ears. The clinic doctor told us to go to the county hospital. Oh, if she becomes deaf, what are we going to do?" Li Qiao was taken aback. "Jinhua, didn't you stay at Granny's place?" She tried to get a look at Li Jinhua's face, but Li Jinhua stepped back 2 paces, hiding behind her scarf and avoiding her, all the while glancing towards Qin Jin. He leaned lazily against a post by the roadside, his eyes directed toward her, a smirk playing across his face as he smoked idly, the very image of a hooligan. She was stricken. He acted as if nothing was wrong, indicating just how cruel and heartless he could be. But then again, if she stuck with him, she'd be living in a villa with a driver and a maid at her beck and call. So being beaten, she could accept that too. "What happened?" Dong Lamei said in a state of alarm. Li Qiao summed up the events succinctly. Upon hearing the story, Dong Lamei scolded, "You didn't even look for your sister yesterday." Li Qiao retorted with some anger, "Who would expect Jinhua to leave in the middle of the night without a word? And Granny even said she fell asleep waiting for her, making me feel particularly embarrassed." What she meant was, your daughter lacks manners, making me lose face. You don't teach your daughter better, yet you come questioning me as though I'm to blame. Is that reasonable? Dong Lame was at a loss for words. Although she was a stepmother, she had always managed to avoid giving people anything to criticize regarding how she treated Li Qiao. As there were many people around, it wasn't the time to quarrel, so she changed the subject. Where are all of you headed? Li Qiao replied, to the county town as well. The minibus arrived and a line of passengers boarded, filling up most of the seats. Qin Jin and Li Qiao sat in the last row of double seats, with Wang Nannan and Du Xinxin sitting in front of them. The two girls discussed going to get food and drinks after buying their review materials in the city. Li Qiao asked them in a quiet voice where to buy sanitary pads. Dong Lemay and Li Jinhua were seated in a separate row by themselves, the mother and daughter one in front of the other. Lemay glanced at Li Qiao and whispered to Jinhua, your third sister marrying loser Qin has completely ruined her reputation, yet these two girls still want to hang out with her. They must not be decent. Upon hearing this, Li Jinhua looked back and saw Qin Jin taking out a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it up and smoking by the window. The driver, seeing this in the rearview mirror, called out, that little rascal in the back, no smoking on the bus. Qin Jin, who you calling a rascal, you old fart? Haven't you heard about loser Qin from Feng Family Village? Li Qiao quickly snatched the cigarette from his mouth, stamped it out on the floor of the bus with her foot and covered his mouth. So embarrassing. Instead of being ashamed of being called a loser, he took pride in it. He was the spitting image of a rebellious, angsty teenager. She sincerely apologized on his behalf. Sorry, driver. My boyfriend didn't mean to. It's good you put it out. Smoking on the bus is really dangerous. Yeah, we promise it won't happen again. Li Qiao, acting the part of the compliant student, turned and warned, no smoking or swearing, or don't blame me when I tell grandma. The young man's pupils dilated, and his heartbeat quickened at the soft, threatening tone of the girl's voice and the cool, slippery touch of her hand on his palm. Unable to face her directly anymore, he glanced at her sideways, catching glimpses of the setting sun shining on her. Her face as radiant as fine jade, lips like gleaming pearls. The bulky and unattractive floral cotton clothes seemed to become fashionable on her. He stared again, meeting her threatening gaze, and unable to swallow his pride, he retorted, always using grandma to press me down. Everyone silently sympathized with Li Qiao, such a nice girl, marrying a loser because of rumors and gossip. Such a waste. Li Jinhua was very disappointed. She had expected Qin Jin to lose his temper, thinking Li Qiao would at least get a beating. When the minibus arrived at the county town, Dong Lamei and Li Jinhua got off first. Li Qiao called out to her mother, take care, Jinhua. Dong Lamei responded verbally but inwardly cursed. Her own sister was injured, and yet she still had the mood to play around. An ungrateful wretch, what a waste raising you to this age. Li Qiao's group headed to the bookstore first. Though it was morning, it wasn't empty. Everyone was there to buy study materials for repeating the year, and some bookshelves were already empty. Wang Nannan complained, there's nothing left, this trip has been a waste. Even Du Xinxin was getting anxious. We can't leave empty-handed, can we? Li Qiao browsed through the remaining books and found an introductory English workbook. You could buy this one. Wang Nannan, English doesn't count towards the total score, why bother buying it? Li Qiao, just because it wasn't counted in the first year doesn't mean it won't be in the second. Wang Nannan sneered dismissively. Convinced by Li Qiao's advice, Han Ting and Du Xinxin stepped forward to get the workbook. The latter asked, aren't you buying one, Li Qiao? The school will probably hand out something similar, Li Qiao said. She picked out a physics and a mathematics book next, which covered a wide range of topics. Perhaps because of the high level of difficulty and the belief that these wouldn't be on the test, no one else had bought them. But if one mastered these books, there would be no fear of the more challenging questions on the test. She found them useful and began recommending them. Wang Nannan, thinking Li Qiao was giving bad advice, objected, how can we start with these when we haven't even cleared up the fundamentals? I have basic notes and the test papers from last year. I'll lend them to you later. If there's anything you don't understand, we can discuss it together. Stick to it for a month or two and you'll have a solid foundation. Upon hearing this idea, everyone thought it was good and everyone except Wang Nannan made the purchase. Li Qiao also wanted to buy 2 books on reading comprehension, but the price made her hesitate. She picked up the books and then put them down and then picked them up again. Qin had been waiting outside. He glanced through the glass window and saw her actions, then walked straight into the store and picked up a book. You've come all this way, so if you want to buy it, just buy it. Qiao pursed her lips and smiled. It was funny that he was annoyed with her yet willing to spend money on books for her. With curved eyes she said, It's too expensive though. It's not like I absolutely have to read it. I'll wait until I get to university and earn a scholarship before buying it. Qin. What can you do if you don't brag? Qiao refused to agree to buy the reading book. After leaving the bookstore, Qin quietly told her there was another channel for buying books. Qiao immediately called over her friends. Qin was speechless. She really didn't treat these people like outsiders. Wang Nanan found out it was a private trading spot and, being against the rules, was unwilling to go. Lu Jing echoed, I think I'll pass too. Seeing this, the remaining three began to hesitate. Qiao couldn't understand. It's just buying a book, not doing something bad. Even if we do run into the duty student on patrol, what could they possibly do to us? Is it really necessary for you to act this way? For the first time, Qin agreed with her perspective. Exactly, let's go. If they don't want to go, they can drop it. He pulled Qiao forward. Du Xinxin wavered for a moment but still followed. If Qiao, who had a solid foundation and was still willing to make progress, Du Xinxin felt she needed to work even harder given her weaker background. Han Ting followed next as Zhou Qing called out for them to wait for her. Lu Jing wanted to follow but was afraid something might actually happen, so the two rule-abiding people decided to head home first. Qin led Qiao and the others through dark alleys, turning here and there until they arrived at a secluded trading spot. The place was bustling. There were stalls selling rice, flour, steamed buns and all types of sweets, as well as pots, pans, ladles, basins, small farm tools, a lot cheaper than elsewhere. Going to the very end, Qiao saw the book stall. She found an English-Chinese dictionary from the last century and treasured it immediately, asking for the price right away. 50 cents. 10 cents, take it or leave it, bargained Qin. All right. Take it, the seller acquiesced. Qiao looked up at the young man before her with admiration. You're so amazing, she said, impressed by how he managed to bring the price down to the lowest. Qin raised an eyebrow. Was he amazing just for haggling? She acted like she had never seen the world. Du Xinxin found a book on chemistry and asked Qiao to check it for her. Qiao, help me see if this book is good. Qiao quickly flipped through it. It's not bad. It's all basic knowledge and quite suitable for you. Han Ting picked up a book of Chinese reading comprehension exercises. Qiao, can you check this one for me? Qiao looked it over carefully. The types of questions are quite rich. I think it's very good. Make sure to lend it to me after you finish so I can do it too. Sure. Qin listened to her giving advice as if she knew it all, pondering. Everyone found the books and materials they wanted and left the book stall to continue browsing. Qiao saw stalls selling toilet paper and sanitary pads and asked about the prices. A large roll of toilet paper was only 10 cents, and loose sanitary pads were 3 for 10 cents. Qin turned it over and over, looking curious. Is this a plaster? Why is it such a big piece? His remark nearly made the vendor and those around laugh out loud. Qiao also laughed and leaned in to explain. Qin's cheeks turned red as he felt a rare moment of embarrassment. No wonder Han Ting and Zhou Qing didn't come along. He stuffed money into Qiao's hand and strode away quickly. Qiao bought a big stack of toilet paper and enough sanitary pads to last a while. Du Xinxin also made a purchase, and just as they finished packing their stuff, they heard a shout to run fast. Qiao didn't know what was happening when she saw everyone scattering in disarray. Qin quickly snatched the cloth bag from her hand and pulled her to dash as they ran, but as they turned a corner, they were separated by the rushing crowd. Pressed by the throng, Qiao couldn't adjust direction and was forced to go with the flow. Once the crowd thinned around her, she stood there, anxious and unsure of what to do. Chapter 11. Inquiry. At the exit of the alley, Qiao was stopped by two young men wearing duty badges on their sleeves. What are you doing? Answer honestly. Walking, Qiao replied. What are you doing here? Buying books. Show me the receipt. Qiao couldn't produce it. It was all on Qin. It's my first time in the city and I got lost before I could buy anything. Do you two big brothers know the way to the bookstore? She looked innocent and her tone was gentle and humble. Calling them big brothers relaxed their serious expressions a lot, and they even kindly pointed her in the right direction and told her not to run around before letting her go. Li Qiao kept walking forward and soon encountered Qin Jin. She ran over excitedly. "Did you come looking for me? Who else would I be looking for? Idiot. Where are Du Xinxin and the others?" Li Qiao asked. "How should I know?" Li Qiao was quite worried, but before she could go back to look for them, Qin Jin stopped her. "They are not 3-year-olds who can't find their way home. I'm afraid they might get caught. At most they'd have to write a reflection and get a verbal warning. What's there to fear?" Reassured by his words, she went with him to the bus stop. They waited for less than 10 minutes before they saw Du Xinxin and 3 others. Du Xinxin breathed a sigh of relief. "I was afraid you were caught. Principal Han said if he didn't see you back in the village, he'd have someone inquire at the place where people are detained, to find out if you were there and to get you out." Qin Jin scoffed. "You guys care about me as much as a wife does." Du Xinxin and the others exchanged looks, nonplussed by his unreasonableness. They were clearly just worried. The atmosphere around them grew tense. Li Qiao wished she could smack the young man beside her. They clearly cared about him. To ease the awkwardness, she smiled and broke the ice. "Jean didn't mean that. But wow, not following the rules can have serious consequences, huh? Thank goodness we're all fine. Next time we buy books, let's stick to proper places." Oh, here comes the bus. Everyone's attention turned to the minibus and the topic was casually dropped. Back home safely, Li Qiao organized the daily goods she had bought and started working on the new exercise books she had purchased. Someone came calling for Qin Jin, but for once he didn't leave the house. Instead, he leaned against the head of the bed, flipping through Li Qiao's books. She seemed so knowledgeable when discussing studies with others. He wanted to see how she took notes and had such insights yet still managed not to get into university. It made no sense. The pages of the book had 2 types of handwriting. Although both were neat, one was childish and clumsy, the other elegant and beautiful. The inside page had the name Li Qiao, clearly belonging to the former style. Was the beautiful writing done by an educated youth? He stepped forward to verify her handwriting. It was elegant and neat. His interest and curiosity grew somewhat. Interesting, a person could actually produce 2 completely distinct styles of handwriting. Suddenly, he heard a series of knocks and then old Mrs. Qin shouting, "Qiao Qiao, look at the bride." Curious, Li Qiao put down her book and went outside. From a distance, she saw a crowd at the entrance of the village carrying something her way, with a man at the front riding a bicycle with a woman in front. As the group drew closer, Li Qiao spotted Kai Hechuan, still dressed sharply, holding a pair of pillows. Was he helping with bringing in the bride? Hechuan also saw her and stretched out his hand to flick his hair with his head held high and chest puffed out. Li Qiao was speechless. This man was really full of himself, always trying to show off his charm as if he thought he was so handsome. Ridiculous. Qin Jin snickered and cursed. A peacock in a cesspool, so vain. Look at that hairdo, even a fly would have to do splits to get off it. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was the groom. Old Mrs. Qin gently scolded, "Don't stir up trouble." Qin Jin pouted, but his gaze fell on Li Qiao, who was looking at the bride at that time, dressed in bright red, clean and neat, looking quite delicate. The groom, on the other hand, was too rough, dark and old, like a fresh flower stuck in cow dung. She definitely wasn't marrying willingly. She couldn't bear to look anymore and turned around to go back into the yard. Qin Jin thought that Hechuan's appearance had stirred up her emotions. His face immediately darkened a bit, and he was about to curse. But Li Qiao suddenly faced him and the two nearly bumped into each other. Li Qiao chuckled, "You walk so quietly, I almost ran into you. By the way, come back to my mother's house with me, will you? Jinhua has injured herself, and as her sister who knows about it, it wouldn't seem right to keep quiet, don't you think?" Although Lumei was his stepmother, she had financed his high school education. If he neglected this, would she use it to speak ill of him to others? Her voice was soft and sweet, with a smile in her eyes. Qin Jin's refusal spun in his throat before he said, "All right." Li Qiao then consulted with old Mrs. Qin and finally took 2 pounds of white sugar, got into Qin Jin's car and soon arrived at her mother's house. Lumei saw the white sugar in Li Qiao's hands, beaming with joy. That dead girl finally showed some conscience. Li Qiao greeted his parents and chatted for a bit, confirming that Jinhua's ears were fine, then went into Jinhua's room and asked with concern, Jinhua, feeling any better? Jinhua found out that Li Qiao and Qin Jin had come. She hurriedly wrapped a scarf around her face. Why did you come? Did loser Qin call you? To change people's fixed impressions of Qin Jin, Li Qiao immediately responded. Of course, he said he didn't realize how serious your injury was, and if he'd known, he would have looked for you last night. So we came here right after getting back from the county city. Jinhua finally felt somewhat relieved. What were all of you doing in the city? Just hanging out. Li Qiao didn't elaborate to Jinhua. Didn't buy anything? Jinhua was skeptical. Or are you just reluctant to tell me because you're afraid I'll ask for something? Li Qiao secretly grimaced. Her mind was indeed sharp. Loser Qin gave me a red cashmere coat. It's too cold to wear it now, but if you want it, I can give it to you. It was too ugly to wear alone and would just gather dust otherwise. Jinhua's eyes lit up just as she remembered Li Qiao had a red coat. In a few days, Li Qiao would have to divorce Qin Jin prematurely. Qin Jin would also regret hitting her. By then she might even propose to herself. Thinking this, Jinhua retorted, I don't want anything bought for you. I'm more curious where loser Qin got the money from. Did he come into some windfall? Could it be that Qin Jin was secretly dealing in antiques from this time? She hadn't paid attention to Qin Jin in her past life and didn't know much about him. She just knew that every time he visited relatives here, he never came empty-handed. Unlike Hechuan, who even in the 21st century, would still bring just 2 pounds of sheep horn honey when visiting relatives. Stingy as hell. Li Qiao stated matter-of-factly, I'm not sure, he didn't tell me. He's so fierce I don't dare ask, but he definitely would have told Grandma. Didn't steal or rob, maybe he found it. Jinhua smirked to herself. Li Qiao was still as foolish. Just picking up 2 or 3 hairs and calling it hair picking. A coat must cost dozens at least, right? How easy could that be to just find? Is it speculating and profiteering then? Don't make accusations without evidence, Li Qiao said sternly. She often hung out with the educated youths and knew the consequences of speculating and profiteering. It wasn't just creating disturbances and getting locked up for a day. In severe cases, one might actually go to prison. Jinhua was surprised. Shouldn't Li Qiao be disgusted upon hearing this news? Why did she seem concerned? Are you worried about him? You haven't fallen for him, have you? Li Qiao was disdainful. Who would fall for him? The first criterion for being her boyfriend was not to speak foul language, and he was always cursing. Jinhua was relieved and started to bring up Hechuan again. Chapter 12. Abnormal. Li Qiao seriously suspected that Li Jinhua had taken a fancy to Qin Jin, because every time Qin Jin was mentioned, her eyes would become especially fervent. No, greedy. Like a wolf that hadn't eaten for several days seeing meat. This would explain why she wanted to match her with Kai Hechuan. But Qin Jin was her meal ticket, not to mention a stepsister. Even a blood sister was out of the question. With this thought, Li Qiao's heart turned cold, but she still politely took her leave from Li Jinhua, her tone slightly cool. Someone in the village is having a celebration, we'll be going later to have wedding drinks, so I won't stay. Li Jinhua suddenly remembered an old incident. Is it Feng Guangguan from the east end of the village getting married? How do you know? Li Jinhua's eyes sparkled, dimming in an instant as she said with a flicker in her eyes. The villagers are talking about it. They say Feng Guangguan is quite lucky with women, getting to marry a fresh young wife even though he's well into his 30s. Be careful on the road. Li Jinhua's sudden odd behavior didn't escape Li Qiao's eyes, and she thought to herself, you'd better not provoke me or you'll be sorry. Once home, Li Qiao refused to attend the feast on the pretext of suddenly feeling unwell. Because she had seen the village host both wedding and funeral banquets, where all the dishes were cooked together, served in large bathing tubs with everyone borrowing bowls and chopsticks, crowded together to eat. Spittle flying during conversations, it was unacceptable. Old Mrs. Qin, worried she might be hungry, added a handful of firewood to the stove and threw in 2 sweet potatoes before heading out with Qin Jin. Li Qiao immediately locked the front door. Seeing this, Qin Jin couldn't help but interject, locking the door in broad daylight as if scared others won't know our house has valuables. Idiot. Fool. You little wretch. How dare you curse? Old Mrs. Qin kicked at him and he ran off like a shot. After finishing a mock exam, Li Qiao heard a knocking at the door. She peeked through the crack and saw it was Kai Hechuan. She ignored him, but he kept knocking and calling her name. Worried about being seen by others and becoming the subject of gossip, She eventually lifted the latch. Kai Hechuan, propelled by the momentum against the door, stumbled into the courtyard reeking of alcohol and accused her. I ask you, did you sleep with loser Qin? Li Qiao made the face of an old man staring at his phone on the subway thinking, are you sick? Kai Hechuan continued to accuse. Did I hit the nail on the head? Flirtatious woman, you said I would be your first. While Li Qiao felt disgusted, she was also extremely relieved. She had considered that the original owner had been with him, which made her more disgusted than if she had swallowed a fly. About to send him away, she caught a flash of green out of the corner of her eye behind the straw stack at the doorway. Her heart skipped a beat. Who was there? She was about to shout when Kai Hechuan grabbed her wrist and demanded, you have to give me an explanation today. Let go, Li Qiao said, disgusted as she twisted her wrist trying to break free. His strength was shockingly great, so she threatened, I'm going to call for help. Go ahead, let everyone come and see you with me after you're married. Alcohol emboldened the cowardly. Kai Hechuan lunged at her unwillingly. Li Qiao couldn't dodge in time and was embraced, frozen in shock. Not until Kai Hechuan's face was inches away did she react, her scalp tingling. She first raised her hand to block his invading mouth and then drove her knee into his lower body. Kai Hechuan let go of her in pain. Li Qiao, free, rushed to the door, but the figure behind the straw stack had already disappeared. Worried that it might be a neighbor, she feared they might already be on their way to inform Qin Jin. A chill ran down her spine. Help! How was she to know his temper wouldn't explode? In a panic, she used a broom to push and shove Kai Hechuan away and only relaxed after the door was bolted shut again. But the next second she started to worry if Qin Jin would come to settle the score with her. Li Jinhua saw Kai Hechuan heading to the Qin family's home and intentionally hid behind the straw stack by the door to observe, confirming that the two were embracing as they headed toward Feng Guangguan's place. She remembered a past life when Feng Guangguan got married, and she inadvertently found out Kai Hechuan was escorting the bride. Worrying that Qin Jin might misunderstand, she chose not to join the Qin family for the meal. But who could have thought that after a drunken Kai Hechuan sought her out and spoke only a few words before Qin Jin returned. Misunderstanding the situation on the spot, he beat Kai Hechuan till his nose bled profusely. Had old Mrs. Qin not returned in time, perhaps she would have been beaten as well. It was this time that Li Qiao firmly decided to divorce. She must fan the flames to push their divorce forward. Halfway there, Li Jinhua encountered Qin Jin, who was hurrying and had a displeased look, thinking to herself that it was exactly the same as in her past life. Qin Jin realized that Kai Hechuan was missing and hurried home to look for him. But at this moment their affair had undoubtedly not succeeded. She stopped him to delay the time, pretending to be unaware. Brother-in-law, where's third sister? Just now I passed by your house and there was no one there. Is she at Feng Guangguan's place? Qin Jin coldly said, step aside. Brother-in-law, I will tell the third sister about you hitting me. Qin Jin's eyes darkened by 3 shades in an instant. Li Jinhua thought he was afraid, but to her surprise he raised his hand, yanked off the scarf covering her face and slapped her twice. You're going to talk about it anyway, might as well hit you a few more times. Li Jinhua's head buzzed. You go back and see my third sister and Kai Hechuan under the quilt. Qin Jin switched to running. Li Jinhua could already imagine the expression on Qin Jin's face after catching the adulterers. Let it be a commotion, best to make it known to everyone. Kai Hechuan was probably drunk, and despite being kicked out by Li Qiao, he stubbornly lingered, banging on the door asking Li Qiao to let him in to make it up to him. Li Qiao was furious and decided to give him a profound lesson. Looking around, her gaze landed on the swill bucket next to the kitchen stove, and she immediately had an idea. She went forward, picked up the bucket, stepped on the stool and without hesitation dumped it under the door. Her movements were as smooth as flowing water. After a loud shout, Kai Hechuan, startled by the cold water, jumped up and instinctively turned around, facing the 2 wooden doors. He looked around and no one was there. Who dumped water on me? Loser Qin, come out. Li Qiao calmly put the stool and bucket back in their places. Smelling the aroma of sweet potatoes, her appetite surged and she sat there digging out sweet potatoes to eat. Kai Hechuan at the door continued to curse. The despicable, shameless loser Qin, you bastard. Why are you calling your dad you unfilial son? Qin Jin responded from a distance. As he got closer and saw that the door was securely locked with only Kai Hechuan outside, Soaked and disheveled, his mood brightened and he laughed heartily. Did you fall into a ditch? You look like a drowned dog. Kai Hechuan, half sobered by the cold, shivering, said, You laugh after dumping foul water on me, just you wait. Unable to bear the cold, he hugged himself and ran home. It was only then that Qin Jin noticed a puddle of water in front of the main door, and with both hands he stroked his chin and thought. Li Jinhua was dumbfounded. Where was Li Qiao? Shouldn't she be getting cozy with Kai Hechuan? Qin Jin knocked on the door. Li Qiao opened the door. There was no movement in the yard, so he peered through the crack of the door and caught sight of her squatting by the stove eating a sweet potato, her eyes fixed on the door, and when their eyes met, the sweet potato skin in her hand fell to the ground. He felt both amused and pained. Was he that frightening? Since she hadn't had a secret meeting with Kai Hechuan, he felt like going back to Feng Guangguan's house for a drink. Turning his head, he saw Li Jinhua standing dumbly at the door, threw a punch into the air as a silent warning to her. If she dared to talk nonsense, he would hit her again. Li Jinhua, frightened, retreated repeatedly. On her way home, the more she thought about it, the more something seemed off. This shouldn't be. Could it be that her involvement had led to this unexpected turn of events? Realizing this, she was filled with regret. Chapter 13. True handsome. Once Qin Jin left, Li Qiao also knew who had been hiding behind the haystack. No wonder she thought that green outfit looked familiar. It was what Li Jinhua had worn yesterday. She finally understood why Li Jinhua had acted so strangely. Because she had planned to catch Qin Jin in the act of infidelity from the morning. But there was one thing she couldn't figure out. How did Li Jinhua know Kai Hechuan would come to her house? A vague and ominous fear took hold of her heart. She no longer had the mood to read. Sitting idly made it easy to drift into wild thoughts, so she opted to distract herself by cleaning. After tidying up both the inside and outside of the house, she went out to collect discarded vegetable leaves to feed the rabbits. On her way back, she met old Mrs. Qin, who had just finished joyously drinking, and greeted her. Grandma, have you had a good meal? Where's Jean? That stinky kid is still out there eating and drinking like there's no tomorrow. Old Mrs. Qin noticed the watermarks at the entrance and murmured, Qiao, did you see who spilled the water? Li Qiao dared not answer. I didn't see it. Old Mrs. Qin cursed under her breath. It must be that stinker offending someone again, and they came to warn us. Li Qiao secretly stuck out her tongue, feeling sorry that loser Qin got blamed. She finished feeding the rabbits and cleaning their hutch, and as she was disposing of the waste, she ran into Du Xinxin, whom the youth had tipped off. They exchanged greetings. From Du Xinxin, Li Qiao learned that Qin Jin, drunk as a lord, had ended up on Feng Guangguan's bed and immediately ran to pick him up. Du Xinxin sighed. It's such a pity for Li Qiao. Not only is she beautiful, she is also diligent and ambitious. Why would she marry loser Qin? Wang Nanan said, What do you think she was striving for in college for? Do you think she would divorce after getting into college? Definitely. I heard her previous boyfriend was a college student. They had a massive argument because her family disapproved. It was practically a life or death situation. When Li Qiao arrived at Feng Guangguan's house, he was standing at the door of the main hall cursing someone, and of course the person being cursed was Qin Jin, who had taken over the newlywed's bed, leaving the bride nowhere to sit and forcing her to leave the room. Qin Jin was unreasonably combative. I am still a virgin. My presence on your bed is a blessing, bringing you great fortune. You should be giving me a red envelope instead of kicking me out. Don't you know what's good for you? At this statement, the onlookers in the courtyard burst into laughter. The man was married and still claimed to be a virgin. The virgin, your wife has come for you. Qin Jin, dizzy from drinking, struggled to get up when he heard the words, your wife. He saw Li Qiao approaching with a polite yet slightly awkward smile and said gently, Jin, let's go home. Qin Jin felt an unexpected softness in his chest and followed her with unsteady steps. Li Qiao quickly supported him, and as they crossed the threshold, she apologized for the drunken indiscretion. Feng Dafa, sister-in-law, I'm really sorry for taking over your marital bed. Seeing this, Feng Guangguan was actually the one who felt embarrassed. You're taking it too seriously. Li Qiao helped the drunken man home, out of breath and complaining, You always get drunk and always have to drink. All of a sudden, Qin Jin opened his eyes, held her face preventing any struggle, and scrutinized her closely. Why do you look so pretty? Your lips so red and your teeth so white. There's a poem, what was it? Beside the donkey, a person like the moon, telling the moon suspected of frost and snow. Li Qiao nearly died laughing. It's clearly beside the wine jar, a person like the moon, pale wrists like frosty snow. Ignorance is indeed scary. Are you my wife or not? If you are my wife, you cannot make fun of me. Apologize right now. Helplessly dealing with the drunkard, Li Qiao complied. All right, I apologize. I shouldn't have made fun of you. That's more like it. Old Mrs. Qin came in to pour water and saw the scene inside. She left smilingly and thoughtfully closed the door for them, thinking that before long she should be able to hold a great-grandson. Li Qiao, hearing the noise, turned her eyeballs. From the corner of her eyes, she caught a glimpse of old Mrs. Qin's shadow, and she felt both embarrassed and annoyed. The posture of bending over was too tiring, so she prepared to take off her shoes to get on the bed, but before she could lift her foot, the young man closed his eyes and his hand also loosened. He muttered, "My wife Loser Qin's really is quite handsome." Li Qiao thought to herself, what's the use of being handsome? You're sleeping in the bed as if I'm a pillow. To prevent a headache, she massaged his temples for quite a while and fed him water. Old Mrs. Qin came in twice, each time giving him 2 loud slaps, cursing him for being no good. Li Qiao was shocked and speechless. He was just drunk and hadn't caused trouble. How could he be considered no good? Could it be because nothing had happened between them as it should have, that the old lady was angry? Looking at his red face, she worried he would wake up and think the pain was her doing. He hurried to massage him. Qin Jin didn't wake up until noon the next day. When he opened his eyes, he saw Li Qiao sitting properly at the desk, her plump cotton clothes making her look as sturdy as a bear. Her hair was parted on either side into 2 braids. As unrefined as it gets, but when she turned her head, her clothes suddenly looked much better on her. His voice slightly hoarse, he said, "Was it you who looked after me when I was drunk?" Not feeling any discomfort. Even his clothes had been changed. Who else could it be if not me? Qin Jin's mood improved, lifting the corners of his lips. You do have a conscience. Li Qiao. When was she ever without conscience? Qin Jin put on his clothes and went outside, and before long he brought in a bowl of food to eat. It must be cold sitting here all day, right? Hurry up and finish writing so we can go catch fish by the river together, he said unequivocally. Li Qiao, without forgetting to reply while answering questions, said, Sure, soon. It was said that some straightforward men's way of dating was to take their girlfriends fishing or catching cicadas. His initiative to bring her along meant that he was starting to accept her, and she needed to seize the opportunity to form a good relationship with him. After the new year, when she was living at school, he would be more willing to do her part of the job. After Li Qiao finished the problem in her hand and tidied up the desk, she went out with him, thinking it would be just the 2 of them. Unexpectedly, it was a group. A bunch of teenagers, aged around 18 or 19, full of vitality. Those with partners were hugging their partners. Those without were carrying tools and slinging arms over each other's shoulders, talking about which family's wall was easy to climb and which girl was the most handsome. Jin, the wind outside is a bit strong and it's cold. Li Qiao intentionally moved closer, hoping he would warm her hands like other husbands did for their wives or hold her in his arms and whisper. To her surprise, he said, That's still warmer than you sitting still. She watched as he picked up twigs from the ground and vigorously whipped the dead grass on the side of the road, sending it flying all over. Li Qiao was exasperated. This is not something she would even do at the age of 3. How childish. Feng Family Village and Tulu Village shared a reservoir. The group crossed the road, walked a distance, and arrived at their destination. The river surface was covered with a thick layer of ice. Li Qiao cautiously stepped onto it and followed a few others towards the center of the river. Qin Jin had some skills. He tapped around and finally made a hole in the ice. Before long they started catching fish, scooping them up one ladle after another. Li Qiao found it incredibly fascinating and couldn't help but exclaim, You're really amazing. Qin Jin raised an eyebrow. Just average. After filling the buckets they brought along, Qin Jin strung up the large fish and ordered the younger ones to deliver them to the homes of the village chief and the team leader. Only after that the rest were divided amongst the group. Li Qiao thought he was quite worldly wise. Nowadays the property was collectively owned. Although people often fished from the reservoir, no one ever managed it, but if someone were minded to make an issue out of it, he would inevitably get into trouble. By winning over the village chief and the team leader, as long as they kept quiet, nobody else could stir up trouble. Chapter 14. Tease her. The group returned loaded with their catch, chatting and laughing on the way back. Old Mrs. Qin couldn't close her mouth from the laughter upon seeing the fish in the bucket. 7 or 8 big carps were enough for the whole family to feast for a while. She picked out 2 of the biggest and called Li Qiao to take them back to her parental home. Li Qiao felt extremely reluctant on the inside. It wasn't that she was unwilling to show filial piety, but rather that Li Jinhua was too much to handle and they couldn't afford to fall out. However, she couldn't find an excuse to shirk the task. Her gaze swept over Qin Jin, who was busy cleaning the fish. How about this evening then? I'll go together with Jin. That way she could spend more time reading during the day. Old Mrs. Qin thought it was a good idea, as the young couple walking together at night might help to foster their relationship. Qin Jin wasn't pleased. Going out at night, who knows, they might think I'm out to commit theft. Old Mrs. Qin rolled her eyes. What a dim-witted boy. With the dark night and high winds and no one around, wasn't his wife there for him to do as he pleased? The family was talking amicably when Ping Chunhua from next door came over. Catching sight of the big carps in the bucket, she let out a long drawn-out yo. Did you catch these fish from the reservoir? Li Qiao responded, emphasizing that it was Qin Jin who had crafted the hole. Peng Chunhua felt envious and jealous in her heart. She had long noticed that Qin Jin was capable. While others of the same age still relied on their parents, he could single-handedly support his family. Keeping a forced smile, she said, "You really have good fortune, just focusing on reviewing for the university entrance exams without having to do anything else. With all this effort, you're sure to get admitted next year." Li Qiao felt somewhat embarrassed and smiled coyly. "Yeah, when Jin is not at home I do some work. When he's back I'm basically idle." Qin Jin couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. What a fool, agreeing to such backhanded praise. Can't she tell it's loaded? Now the whole village was going to know that she was so lazy that she only relied on her grandmother-in-law and husband to look after her. If she failed the college entrance exams, no one knew how many people would laugh. Peng Chunhua chuckled lightly, mentioning offhandedly, "Jin didn't call our Huzi to go fishing with him." Li Qiao gave her a puzzled look. "Isn't your man supposed to be feeding pigs in the production team?" It was a rotational duty for taking care of the livestock in the team, and today it was their neighbor's turn because tomorrow it would be hers. Qin Jin almost laughed out loud. Peng Chunhua was obviously just envious of the fish he had caught, hinting that she wanted one. Silly girl. Peng Chunhua's pretense was immediately exposed, her face turning red and then white. She retorted with forced composure, "I went back to my mother's home today and didn't pay attention." Li Qiao pursed her lips, thinking to herself that Peng Chunhua always bragged about how much she did at home, yet she didn't even know what her own partner was up to. She excused herself with, "Please excuse me," and turned to go back inside to continue tackling the problems left from the midday study session. After double-checking her answers and copying the wrong ones into her notebook with detailed notes on the reasons for her mistakes, unwittingly it had become late. As dusk fell, Peng Chunhua had long since left, having been lured out by the tantalizing scent of fresh fish in the yard. In the iron pot, the milky white broth with the faintly visible white flesh of the fish was topped with a handful of fresh green onions, bubbling and steaming. Her mouth watered just looking at it. Old Mrs. Qin ladled her a generous bowl, and she carefully blew on the hot soup, sipping slowly along the edge of the bowl. It was deliciously fresh and fragrant, with the fish melting in her mouth. Old Mrs. Qin smiled and said, "Qiao Qiao, you have such a lovely way of eating, unlike little rascals who slurp away loudly, so crude." Qin Jin was displeased. "You praise her and then insult me? If I were as pretentious as her, you'd probably scold me for being girlish." Li Qiao adored watching the grandparent and grandchild banter. It was hilarious to her. After having a large serving of soup, she quickly tidied up and went to return the fish to her parental home with Qin Jin. With the cold moon hanging high and the chill wind blowing, dry leaves rustled ominously. As they passed through the wasteland, every so often there came a creepy clattering sound that made Li Qiao's heart chill. Qin Jin walked ahead carrying the fish and she followed in his steps. They were suddenly startled by a stray cat that leapt out, scaring her into jumping and screaming. Qin Jin teased, "It's just a cat. What is there to be afraid of? The really scary things are the deserted graves ahead. When we pass by, don't look around at random, or you might be easily haunted by ghosts." Ah! Li Qiao felt as though her soul had left her body, trembling and falling to the ground as she cried. Her little face turned red, her heartbeat quickened, she was angry and scared. He was just too mean and nasty. The faint sound of crying spread all around. Qin Jin realized he had taken the joke too far, and while helping her up and dusting the dirt off her clothes he said, "I was just teasing you, stop crying. You're too much, I don't think I've wronged you in any way and yet you keep bullying me, Wu." Li Qiao vented her emotions, voicing her dissatisfaction. Listening to her sobs, Qin Jin felt at a loss for what to do. In the past, even if she cried to death he wouldn't have cared. But not this time, he felt uncomfortable. He grabbed her hand and slapped it against his own face. "Hit me to vent your anger, can you stop crying now?" Li Qiao cried even louder. Qin Jin was immediately out of ideas. "What do you want me to do to make you stop crying?" "My hand hurts, hitting your face made my hand ache." Li Qiao was still in shock, feeling extremely wronged. "Qin Jin. What? How about you kick me a couple of times?" He grabbed her ankle and was about to press it against himself. Li Qiao subconsciously retracted her leg, her small fists pounding on his chest. "Wu, you big baddie." I'm a baddie," Qin Jin echoed, seizing the opportunity to hold her hand so small and soft. Her skin was smooth and supple like fine jade, and for a moment he couldn't bear to let go, gently stroking it with his fingertips. He thought to himself that if it really were a piece of jade, such a large piece would be worth quite a bit of money. Li Qiao's mood gradually stabilized, and noticing that he was still touching her hand, she saw it as a good opportunity to get closer to him, leaning into his embrace. The faint scent of soap from the girl's body invaded his nostrils. The sudden closeness made his heart race uncontrollably, and not liking the feeling of losing control, he chose to back away, speaking in a rather unnatural tone. "Don't be afraid, I really was just talking nonsense before." Li Qiao frowned, actually avoiding her. Qin Jin cleared his throat. "Let me tell you something funny. You know the loudspeakers from the electricity poles the big team yard installed a while back? Someone in the village was tapping his shoe against the pole to shake out dirt clumps, and the team leader passing by thought he got electrocuted, and knocked him out with a wooden stick." He bent over laughing at his own story. After a while he didn't hear Li Qiao's voice. "It's so funny, why aren't you laughing?" Li Qiao speechless, he moved closer to her, still laughing. "Give me a smile." Li Qiao stubbornly refused to smile, picking up her pace. As fear overtook her and she stopped in her tracks, the sound of the young man's teasing voice reached her ears. "Not mad anymore, are you?" Li Qiao huffed softly and continued on. After an indeterminately long time, they finally arrived at her parents' home. The gate was tightly shut. Li Qiao knocked on the door without much force and called for someone. Dong Lume was roused from her sleep and started cursing without holding back. "You wretched girl, running back home in the middle of the night? Were you beaten by a man?" When the door opened and she saw the young couple standing side by side, with the son-in-law holding two big fish, she immediately beamed. "It's really our Qiao Qiao who's considerate, thinking of me whenever there's something good. I haven't doted on you in vain. Look, Xingkai, our daughter and son-in-law brought two big fish back." Li Qiao felt contempt in her heart. "That was not what you just said a second ago." Li Xingkai, wearing a cotton coat, came out of the main room slowly. Qin Jin was busy offering a cigarette and lighting it for him, and Li Xingkai was quite pleased. Inside the house, Li Jinhua called out, "Is it the third sister who has come back?" Li Qiao really didn't want to respond, but she pursed her lips and said, "Yes, Jean brought some fish for the family to have too. We'll be leaving soon, won't disturb you." "Third sister, there are some things I want to talk to you about," Li Jinhua called to her. Chapter 15. Quarrel. Li Qiao entered the room very reluctantly, pretending as if nothing had happened. "Jinhua, what's up? Why are you still wearing a scarf this late?" Li Jinhua intentionally avoided Li Qiao's gaze. "My face is swollen. I don't want you to see it." She purposely probed. "Did you know that Kai Hechuan is sick?" "How could I know?" "He said it had to do with you." Li Jinhua stared at Li Qiao as if trying to drill a hole through her, continuing. "Kai Hechuan said he was looking for you and as a result he was drenched by your third brother-in-law and caught a fever." "You didn't know?" Li Qiao thought to herself, serves him right for playing the drunk fool. She feigned surprise. "He was fine when he left my place, is it serious?" Li Jinhua suspected it was Li Qiao who had drenched Kai Hechuan, because at that time, Qin Jin was with her and Kai Hechuan was with Li Qiao, but Kai Hechuan had said he couldn't remember clearly. Hearing this, she dismissed her doubts, confirming that Li Qiao still loved Kai Hechuan. She decided that when Li Qiao came back for the new year and visited relatives, she would no longer interfere with them to avoid further complications. "It's getting late, you should rest." "I'm heading back," said Li Qiao as she stood up to leave. On the way home, Qin Jin deliberately slowed down to walk alongside her. Li Qiao seized the opportunity to loop her arm through his. He tensed up, an involuntary reaction to withdraw his arm, but ultimately he held back, realizing he needed to overcome the emotional sway she had on him. Seeing his reaction, Li Qiao slid her hand into his pocket, interlocking their fingers. Qin Jin inhaled sharply, his heartbeat thundering. Was she doing this on purpose? Li Qiao went a step further, leaning her head against his shoulder, but just as she did, they ran into two people. "I was wondering where the lovebirds were sneaking off to in the dead of night." It was He Qirong speaking, with a sickly Kai Hechuan standing next to her, presumably just back from the clinic. Qin Jin responded coolly, "It's the thief who yells, 'Stop thief.'" Realizing what he meant, He Qirong bristled like a cat with its tail stepped on, hands on hips and legs akimbo, bombarding Qin Jin with a barrage of insults that targeted generations of his family, the sound waves crashing against his eardrums. "Damn!" Qin Jin, not to be outdone, bellowed from the depths of his diaphragm, unleashing a stream of anatomical curses. Unable to outswear him, He Qirong berated his lack of manners, proudly boasting about her own family's prestigious lineage, claiming her ancestors were scholars, indicating that soil-tilling bumpkins like Qin Jin could never compare. "One look at you and it's obvious you're from a prestigious family. Your ancestor must be the Tianping marshal. If you're not foraging for food, do you spend all day eating shit?" retorted Qin Jin mercilessly. Li Qiao couldn't help but snicker. Choking with rage, He Qirong stammered, You wait if you dare." She dragged Kai Hechuan home for backup. "I'll wait. Whoever doesn't come is a bastard," Qin Jin declared fearlessly. "All right, let's go too." Kai Hechuan turned his head and caught a fleeting shadow at the bottom of his eyes, as Li Qiao pulled on Qin Jin, their hands clasped together intimately. In the end, Qin Jin followed Li Qiao's suggestion and they left. And of course He Qirong didn't dare come back. Everyone recognized that Qin Jin was a fierce fighter. His family was poor and there was no point in her, a so-called well-shod person, clashing with a barefoot hooligan. But the insult was hard to swallow, and she told Kai Hechuan, "In a few days, when his team asks you to settle the work points, you deduct some from his family's share." Kai Hechuan had similar thoughts. Qin Jin was illiterate after all, deducting 100 or 80 points he wouldn't even know. Qin Jin was still cursing He Qirong, moving on to Kai Hechuan in his tirade. "From one side he looks like a fool, from the other like an idiot." Li Qiao listened with relish, wondering where he had picked up such language. "Why aren't you saying anything? Does it hurt your feelings when I insult Kai Hechuan?" Qin Jin asked jealously. Li Qiao waved her hands in denial. "Absolutely not. Pretend I don't even know him, you're better than him." Qin Jin scoffed coldly, "I don't believe you. He's a college graduate and I'm an illiterate. I'm better than him and you fancy me?" Li Qiao insisted earnestly, "Yes, you don't have to compare yourself with him. A diploma doesn't represent one's character. Character is what's most important. You are hundreds, thousands of times stronger than him." Qin Jin choked up, so she still thought he was a good person. Li Qiao originally wanted to take advantage of the situation to sleep with Qin Jin, but she might have caught a cold on the way. Feeling a bit uncomfortable, she went to bed after washing up when she got home. Qin Jin, who usually slept well, suffered from insomnia, tossing and turning restlessly, feeling an inexplicable impulse and irritability at the bottom of his heart. In the middle of the night, he noticed the person beside him had burning hot skin and immediately woke up, calling out to her twice. Li Qiao opened her eyes groggily, feeling her breathing was hot and her muscles ached. "I feel terrible, I might have caught a cold. I told you to go during the day but you insisted on night." Qin Jin grumbled as he got out of bed to dress and carry her to the health clinic. The doctor prescribed fever-reducing medicine, which, after taken, caused the fever to return shortly. Old Mrs. Qin got up early and upon learning of the situation expressed concern. "You were fine when you went back to your mother's house yesterday. How did you get sick so suddenly? Are you feeling better now?" Li Qiao, weak and powerless. I still feel awful all over. I might be getting my period soon. My resistance might have weakened, and I caught cold because the wind was strong last night. Li Qiao had recurring fevers, and after taking an angin 3 times in one day, old Mrs. Qin, at her wits' end, urged Qin Jin to take her to the county hospital. Qin Jin pondered for a moment. Could it be that she was scared out of her wits last night? Old Mrs. Qin immediately understood what was going on. That rascal definitely bullied her on the way. Previously, there were girls in the village who were scared into illness by him, causing her to be chased and gossiped about by their parents. She yelled furiously, "You rascal, explain yourself clearly." Qin Jin grabbed his own ear. "Ouch, be gentle, I'll explain." He gave a succinct recount of the events. Old Mrs. Qin, unable to contain her anger, grabbed a broom and intended to take Li Qiao to the place where she was frightened to call back her soul. "Li Qiao, Grandma, we must believe in science. We mustn't engage in feudal superstition. We'll go see the doctor after calling for the soul." Li Qiao. Unable to convince old Mrs. Qin, Li Qiao had no choice but to go with her to the countryside. Returning with a stuffed nose, Qin Jin inevitably caught another scolding. Li Qiao spoke up for him. "I recovered after that moment and I wasn't scared afterwards. It has nothing to do with Jin, I just caught a cold. It's his fault." Qin Jin also felt his behavior had been excessive and took Li Qiao to the county hospital. After taking medicine for 2 days, she got better. The day before Chinese New Year's Eve was when the work points were settled in the collective. Old Mrs. Qin, holding the exchanged money, came back and said she felt as if they had been shortchanged. She kept the books every day, knew exactly how much work the family had done, and although her presbyopia made it difficult to see the numbers on the paper, she asked Li Qiao to go over the calculations. After scanning the records, Li Qiao found that they had been shortchanged by a substantial 56 work points. "Who did the calculations? We're missing quite a lot, we should find them." "Kai Hechuan, he's a college graduate, he shouldn't have made a mistake." "Could it be that you've miscalculated? Go back to the room and do the calculations with a pen. How can you do it verbally?" Old Mrs. Qin peeked at her while speaking. "It's definitely his mistake. The shameless thing, taking his revenge out on us privately. I will find him." Li Qiao stormed off with the notebook in hand. Old Mrs. Qin wanted to stop her but failed. Shouting for Qin Jin brought no response as he wasn't in sight. Worried that Li Qiao might be at a disadvantage, old Mrs. Qin hurried after her. The brigade office was crowded with people settling their accounts. The office was as noisy as a vegetable market. Li Qiao, holding their family's account book, slammed it down in front of him. "Our family's accounts, you've undercounted by 56 work points." Kai Hechuan looked up, showing slight surprise, not expecting her to notice and come directly to him. He said, "Your account book doesn't count." Li Qiao, "Then bring over the brigade's account book to check against." Ping Chunhua, accompanying her husband in line, saw Li Qiao cutting in line to make accusations. Qiao, don't cause trouble when so many people are waiting to settle accounts." "Exactly, if you have an issue it won't be late to talk about it after we've finished settling up." Chapter 16. Interested in Kai Hechuan didn't take Li Qiao seriously either, and lowered his head to get busy again. Seeing this, Li Qiao was so angry she clenched her teeth. Treating the farmer's harvest settlement so irresponsibly was simply outrageous. She slammed the table hard with a bang. Silence fell around her. The girl's soft voice was forceful as she spoke. "Our family's accounts don't match up, which means others might have problems too. If you, who usually keep the books, don't hurry to find someone who can calculate to check whether your own accounts match with the team's before rushing to settle, aren't you afraid others will deduct or embezzle? Afraid of being shortchanged? Mr. Kai, I warn you to recalculate quickly. If you don't clear up our family's accounts today, wait until Qin Jin comes to see what happens to you." Upon hearing this, everyone grew anxious. A whole year of hard work wasn't easy, and missing several dozen work points could affect a family's livelihood for a couple of months. It really couldn't be taken lightly. Those who hadn't settled accounts and couldn't do the math themselves sought help from the educated to double-check their accounts. Even those who had settled and came back to join the excitement started to have second thoughts. Kai Hechuan was very displeased, for earlier, for his sake, she had been ready to fight tooth and nail, but now she was seeking trouble with the Qin family on his account. "Your team leader asked me to do the books and it's not me holding the money. How could there be deductions? It's clear your Qin family has fewer laborers and Qin Jin is slacking off, fishing for 3 days and drying the nets for 2. Naturally, you'd have fewer work points. Li Qiao was seething with rage. This guy, not only did he not admit to having calculated the accounts wrong, but he also used the team leader as a shield. She argued with a firm grip on the facts. Are you having trouble understanding? Your miscalculation of the accounts has nothing to do with how many work points we've earned. Don't try to confuse the issue. Hurry up and bring out the original ledger for comparison, or this matter isn't over. That money was related to her tuition fees. Kai Hechuan swept a glance at the crowd waiting to settle accounts. If he refused Li Qiao, it would certainly make him appear guilty, so he promptly called someone to bring a large stack of account books. Li Qiao had no more complaints and took the ledger as old Mrs. Qin hurried over. Qiao, how's it going? About to start checking. Li Qiao found a quiet spot to flip through the ledger. With several dozen families in the brigade, she searched page by page for the Qin family's records. They all matched up, but some of the fives looked too much like SAXS, which was abnormal. She compared them, and for others, fives were fives and SXS were SXs. She showed it to the old lady. Old Mrs. Qin squinted for a long while before saying she couldn't see it clearly. Li Qiao then asked her to shield her. Turning back, she carefully counted the fives that looked like SAXS, which were exactly the number of work points her family was short. What did this indicate? It indicated that Kai Hechuan had fiddled with the numbers secretly. Without a hint of emotion, she tore out the page recording her family's accounts and put it in her pocket. Qiao, what are you doing? Old Mrs. Qin whispered. Li Qiao held a finger to her lips, signaling old Mrs. Qin not to speak further. After closing the ledger, she returned it to Kai Hechuan and left. Kai Hechuan, quite self-satisfied, said, "The accounts I calculate won't be wrong." His companions all chanted their agreement. After they had walked a distance away, old Mrs. Qin spoke up. Qiao, has someone tampered with the ledger? Li Qiao hummed in acknowledgement. Kai Hechuan was hired by our team leader. If I proved he tampered with the ledger, everyone would certainly blame the team leader for poor judgment in hiring. It could lead to everyone demanding a recalculation. I've heard the team leader is petty. He would take it out on me, wouldn't he? After the new year, could he deliberately make things difficult for our family? So I chose not to expose him. Old Miss Qin found this quite reasonable. You thought this through better. Later, I'll have Jean speak to the team leader in private with your account book. Li Qiao disagreed. Don't tell Jean, he has a temper and will surely end up hitting someone. Adds by Pup Future, you go back first, I'll wait here for Kai Hechuan to come out. If he's miscalculated, he'll have to pay. Old Mrs. Qin had more to say but ultimately did not. She left after instructing Li Qiao to come home early. Li Qiao waited at a spot where Kai Hechuan had to pass for nearly an hour and a half before she saw him. She immediately approached him. Kai Hechuan thought she was waiting for him to apologize and catch up. He curled his lips slightly and casually tidied his hair. Li Qiao pulled out the piece of paper she had torn from the ledger. A5 written like a 6, modified overnight, right? Exactly 56 in total. Give me the money. Kai Hechuan's face darkened. You waited here for half a day just for this? What else did you think? Kai Hechuan cleared his throat. Your team's accounts have already been settled. Li Qiao was annoyed. I gave you face by not exposing you in public. If you insist on talking like this, then I can only discuss things with the village chief. My words might not carry much weight, but the evidence I have will certainly affect your reputation if it gets out. You better hurry up and pay back the 5 yuan and 60 cents you owe us. Your family? Loser Qin lacks education and reputation. What are you after? Kai Hechuan reluctantly admitted his loss. As a college graduate, he didn't mind her rural household registration or her low educational credentials, and he was still willing to accept her even after she got married. The problem was she had quickly fallen for someone else after getting married. Li Qiao said, cut the crap, pay back the money, or the story about you abusing your official position for personal revenge will spread throughout the entire commune. Kai Hechuan clenched his fists and finally took out the money, but he threw it on the ground. Li Qiao immediately bent down to pick it up. Kai Hechuan suddenly got angry. Following loser Qin, have you lost all your pride? Li Qiao was completely confused. Where had she lost her pride? She was picking up her own money. Han Ting said that the tuition fee for high school was 2 yuan per semester, and lodging was 1 yuan and 50 cents, so 5 yuan and 60 cents was more than enough. And yet here he was, throwing her family's hard-earned money on the ground and accusing her of lacking pride. It was truly excessive. She counted the money and put it in her pocket. First, my man has a name, Qin Jin. Second, you are shameless. Kai Hechuan took a deep breath, sighed and said, all right, very good. Qin loser smokes, drinks and is lazy. You just prepare to live in poverty with him forever. Li Qiao immediately retorted, smoking your family's cigarettes, drinking your family's alcohol? How is it any of your business that he's idle? You're just looking for trouble. Dousing you with water the other day was really too gentle. Kai Hechuan couldn't believe it. He had blacked out from drinking, only remembering someone pouring water all over him. He thought it was loser Qin who did it, but it turned out to be her. Are you possessed by a ghost or something? Li Qiao unconsciously stammered, how can? Sooner or later you'll regret this. Kai Hechuan left with a stern face. Li Qiao let out a sigh of relief, almost giving herself away. She thought since being belittled by his mother started her cold attitude towards him, it could be a reasonable explanation. She scratched her nose and turned to walk home. Passing by the entrance of the village, she found Qin Jin leisurely lying on top of a haystack, basking in the sun, with a blade of grass in his mouth, looking completely carefree. She waved at him excitedly, Jin. Qin Jin glanced over, spat out the grass and with a slightly softer attitude than before asked, what brought you here? Li Qiao smiled, aren't you going to pull me up? Qin Jin hesitated for a moment before sitting up straight. He stretched out his long arm and Li Qiao climbed onto the haystack with his help, landing right in his arms. Qin Jin's scalp tingled and his heartbeat sped up. It felt as if his heart was filled with a layer of softness. Perhaps it was the sunshine, but his whole body felt warm and comfortable as if bathed in the spring breeze. After a pause he asked, have you taken a liking to me? He had come looking for her immediately after hearing from old Mrs. Qin that she was waiting for Hechuan to settle the account, and he had just overheard her argument with Kai Hechuan. Li Qiao was taken aback, then hummed in agreement. Not that she had a choice, she was assigned to him by fate, like it or not. Qin Jin heard a hum so faint it was almost inaudible, which made his heart race even more. Li Qiao, worried that someone might pass by and see them, sat to the side. From this spot she could see far off, including where she and Kai Hechuan had been standing just before. This guy, he must have asked her why she was there on purpose after seeing her with Kai Hechuan, right? She candidly explained the cause and effect of what had happened. Qin Jin had no intention of settling scores with Hechuan. Getting into a fight during the festive season would make old Mrs. Qin kick him to death, but he pretended to be furious just to see her cute and panicked expression when she tried to pull him back. It was both adorable and fun. Li Qiao took it seriously and hurried to stop him. I got the money back. Let's just forget about it, better to avoid trouble. The more you act like this, the more you'll be bullied, Qin Jin said. Li Qiao didn't quite agree with that. Being powerless and lacking influence, wasn't it necessary to suffer some disadvantage? To change her situation she had to become someone of stature to hold absolute power of speech. Chapter 17. Heart's Eye, what are you two doing sitting on top of the haystack? Li Qiao turned her face to the side with a smile. Chunhua Fenghu, hello. Where are you two off to? Peng Chunhua boasted. Aren't we closing the books today? We got quite a surplus, so Mom said to buy some white flour and meat to make steamed pork buns. It's almost New Year's, aren't you making something nice to eat? We've got some at home. Started preparing the dough last night. Qin Jin. He had just learned from his grandmother her analysis of the team leader's personality and had heard her arguing with Kai Hechuan, thinking she wasn't dumb, but how quickly had she played the fool again? Wasn't it common knowledge not to flaunt one's wealth? Peng Chunhua didn't believe it. As they were neighbors, she would have known if their family had bought white flour. After a perfunctory response about the accounts, she brought up the subject. Your family's accounts are clear, right? Old Mrs. Qin has a bad back and can't do heavy work, and pretty much everything in the field depends on Jin alone. You don't earn much in a year. I thought you marrying into the family would help out, but unexpectedly you're going to retake the exam. What good is there in studying? You should help out with the work and lighten the family's load. Qin Jin took over the conversation. Does her helping out in the field and getting sunburnt make me look more incompetent? Li Qiao agreed wholeheartedly. Peng Chunhua felt disheartened. Why didn't her man think like that? She was busy all day long and still her family took it for granted. Li Qiao did nothing all day, yet old Mrs. Qin always said, "Our Qiao Qiao is exhausted from studying." She said with a tinge of jealousy, "Qiao Qiao is indeed lucky." She nudged the man beside her. "Look at how Jean treats his wife. Why feel sorry for him?" Li Qiao nearly laughed herself breathless, and Ping Chunhua, huffing with anger, walked away with Feng Hu. Not long after, Li Qiao and Qin Jin also went home. Li Qiao handed over the money she had collected to old Mrs. Qin, who was beaming with joy. "Qiao Qiao is really amazing. How did you manage to get it?" Li Qiao repeated the process, and old Mrs. Qin kept praising her for her capability. She went back to the room, put away the money, and started kneading dough to steam buns. After 2 batches, there wasn't enough dough left for a full batch, so Li Qiao suggested making some pan-fried buns with cabbage hearts for dinner. "Sure, I just don't know the recipe. I'll do it." Li Qiao went down to the cellar to fetch cabbage, fed the outer leaves to the rabbits, and kept the hearts, which she chopped up and mixed with seasonings for the filling. She rolled out the dough thinly, filled it with the prepared stuffing, and fried them in the pan until one side was golden, then poured in water to cook them through. When they came out of the pan sprinkled with a few sesame seeds, they were enticing in color, aroma, and flavor. Old Mrs. Qin was very pleased. "Who knew our Qiao Qiao's cooking was so good? It looks delicious just by sight." Li Qiao smiled lightly. "Grandma, have a taste." "Ah." Qin Jin had already eaten one, his mouth shining with oil as he gave a thumbs up. "It's even better than what the chefs make in restaurants." Li Qiao picked one up with her chopsticks and took a bite. She didn't cook often and wasn't sure about the seasoning. It was a little too salty, but the grandparents were supportive. Peng Chunhua and her mother-in-law arrived together. Sniffing the air, she asked, "What delicious thing did you make? It smells so good." Old Mrs. Qin hospitably invited, "Qiao Qiao made pan-fried buns, would you like to try one?" Peng Chunhua embarrassingly accepted. Her mother-in-law Yufeng took a bite and juice splashed everywhere. "Oh, it squirted all over me. How come it splattered? But the taste is really good, it's like meat, delicious." "It might be because I added lard." Li Qiao brought 2 stools for them to sit. Peng Chunhua teased, "I thought you couldn't cook and it turns out you can. So why do you have old Mrs. Qin cook for you every day?" Li Qiao was speechless, with old Mrs. Qin and Qin Jin having no issue, yet an outsider did.